All right, let's see how this goes. He was feeling enthusiastic, with how promising the three-layered enchantment was. Surely one of these would work, and he was quick to hand over one of each staff he made. Hey, I was thinking this for a while, but did we really need to bring all of them? Plenty are just duplicates of themselves, aren't they? Thera asked as she looked on at the pile he still had in hand. It doesn't hurt. They're here just in case I want to see you use one again or try something different. All right then, let's get this over with. She was still uncomfortable to be in an area with a few other people around practicing in the morning, and was a little jealous of how calm Ben seemed about it, still working on shaping his stone while seemingly having his full attention on her. The 5-layer and 7-layer staves worked a bit better than the 3-layered one, but were still ultimately disappointing. After a successful first shot, they tried for a second, and the 5-layer was able to at least create a ball of earth, while the 7-layer one being able to throw it a few meters, but not enough to really consider it a second shot. All that was left were the 2 different 9 layers. Thera started to activate her magic, letting it flow through her into her staff, and felt the same unfamiliar resistance she had experienced with all of his latest works, before firing her first earth bullet. As was expected, the spell shot fine. At least Ben had gotten the hang of making staves she could get a single use out of. What came next was what would matter. The staff itself still appeared fine. No visible cracks or damage was present, and she felt Ben's eyes glued to her, watching her every movement as she prepared to try a second spell. She concentrated, taking more care than she normally would to try and get it to work, and with a swing of her arm fired it. As Ben watched, he saw it was almost perfect. Almost. It fell a little short of the last one still, but it was close enough that it could be called a success. But despite it all, he wasn't happy. What's wrong? Thera asked when she saw the unhappy look plastered on his face. I thought that last one went pretty well. It was at least far better than most times she tried a staff that wasn't made by her uncle but instead a random shop. No, this is great, it's a real improvement and all. I was just hoping that 3 times the layers would work out to 3 times the spells, but of course that wouldn't be the case. All I did was create a smoother gradient for your magic to work through. Maybe I could make it work by making a bigger staff, but at that point it wouldn't be usable. So in that case, should I go back to the drawing board? But then who knows how long it will be before I can make something that can handle 3 shots. She was beginning to pick up on the fact that he would talk a lot when trying to work out a problem. But isn't this okay? If you're making 3 staves at a time like this, that's basically the same as firing 6 spells. Yeah, but the waste is actually insane. Honestly speaking, I have no clue how Falk can afford this. The material costs can't be insignificant. Oh, didn't you know? Uncle has a few patents to his name as well as a few wealthy clients. He's not rich, but at the same time money isn't really going to be an issue for him. Wait, really? Ben asked in surprise. Well, I guess that's fine if my failures aren't going to leave him in the poor house. Is that what he's working on now then? Ben hadn't bothered to ask Falk about what would be keeping him so busy for the next few months. But a big order from a wealthy client would make sense. Thera only shrugged though. Probably? He takes his confidentiality pretty seriously, so he won't talk about it though. So with this, do you feel ready to try another hunt tomorrow? Ben gave it some thought. It was true that they should be fine if they had 3 of the 9-layer staves, but they should still be cautious. Plus, after seeing her use her magic these last few days, he wasn't actually sure Thera could really use her spells in combat. He knew she had been adventuring before, but he wasn't sure about how well it went for her. Still, if he wanted to know, he had better at least ask. Hey! When you were hunting solo, how often would you fail a quest? Juge, where did that come from? I was just thinking about hunting. With me there, you'll still be basically hunting by yourself since I can't fulfill any roles like fighter or tank, and it seems like your magic takes at least a few seconds to activate. She fidgeted about uncomfortably before answering. I guess I would get about 1 or 2 successful quests a week. At this point, it was about what Ben had been expecting, so the comment didn't really faze him. Actually, he had an idea for just what they could do about it. All right, if you're willing to try something a little different, I think we can make hunting work. She was about to ask what he was talking about when a group of 3 called out to them. Hey man, if you don't want to get yourself killed, you should find a real adventurer to party with. Ben turned to look at who was talking and saw the speaker seemed to be a 4-armed warrior, carrying 2 shields in his upper hands and 2 spears in his lower ones. Following behind him were a horned woman with forest green skin that looked like she was carrying some tools for a healer, and a woman with the lower half of a snake that seemed to be Naga whose role wasn't readily apparent. He was about to ask what they wanted when Thera spoke up. "Mind your own business and leave us alone, Sko." The man, apparently Sko, turned to her. Thera, since it doesn't look like anyone else, warned him someone needs to step in. "You have no skill as an adventurer, you're just going to get this poor guy killed. I haven't gotten any teams I've been with injured yet, so just back off. PFF, that's just luck. When you were with us, we couldn't rely on you for any support. Your magic is basically useless. Not to mention your cursed dash." "Shut up!" she screamed, cutting him off. "I'm just trying to practice here, so mind your own business and leave me alone." "Thera, it's nothing personal." The horned green girl cut in. "You just need to find a job more suited to you. Adventuring isn't for everyone." "Yeah," said the Naga. "It's for your own safety too. We already heard about your new partner getting injured and having to walk himself back to the gate. How are you going to feel if he dies because of you?" Thera was shaking with emotion at this point and didn't know what to say, which is when Ben stepped between them and cut in. "Hold on, I got injured because of my own carelessness. If Thera hadn't stepped in to help, it could have been a lot worse. Besides that, I'm enjoying working with her and don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Now if you'll excuse us." He quickly grabbed his things and gestured for Thera to come with him. As they walked away, he heard one of them say, "Looks like the guy's already cursed." They walked in silence for a minute until they were far enough away from the training grounds before Ben turned to her. "Are you okay?" Even if they weren't close and she didn't want to be anything more than a temporary team, he didn't want to think about her being bullied by other adventurers. He really did believe she was a nice enough girl, if not a bit distant with people. She was still trembling a little in anger, but she was doing her best to pull herself together. "I'm all right, thank you. HM? I didn't do anything. Don't worry about it. I mean, for sticking up for me. I appreciate it." "Oh, well, I mean, we're a team right now, it's the least I can do," he told her with a smile. They walked in silence for a bit longer before she spoke up again. "Are you not going to ask about it?" What?" He was genuinely confused. "Being cursed by me. There's those sorts of rumors going around." "What's that?" "I don't care about any rumors. We may not know each other well, but I trust Falk, and he wouldn't have asked me to work with you if he didn't think I could manage. But if we're working together for a while, it may negatively affect people's opinion of you. At the very least, it's well known with the adventurers in town." "Bah! What do I care if some adventurers think I'm being cursed? The whole world already decided I'm useless, so this much is nothing." She was about to ask him what he meant by that, but he spoke up again before she could get any words in. "Anyway, I have an idea for how we're going to get some hunting done tomorrow. I'll just need to gather a couple supplies and check the guild archives quickly. Meet up tomorrow morning." "All right, sure. Cool, see you then." He turned around and was about to run off when he remembered one last thing and turned back to her. "Here, catch." She grabbed what he tossed to her and almost fumbled it before she was able to give it a proper look. When she did, she saw the stone carving he had been working on, of a small cloaked figure holding a staff above her head. "Hope you don't mind. I accidentally ended up using you as a reference while you were practicing. If you don't want it, feel free to throw it out. See you tomorrow then." With his business done, he ran off. Since there were still staves from yesterday, Ben hadn't bothered to make any new ones that night, so after he gathered the supplies they would need, he actually got some sleep in his home before meeting up with Thera the next day. When they met up at the shop, Falk ended up asking them about how yesterday went, and Thera instantly got quiet. Becoming more apparent, it was a tell for when she wasn't interested in talking about something. Presumably, she wanted to keep their little encounter a secret from Falk, so Ben stepped in. "It went okay. The new staff didn't work as well as I had hoped, but we were able to get 2 shots off at least, so we're going hunting today." Falk gave Thera a quick glance but decided not to broach the subject either and instead focus on their hunt. "You sure you're ready, boy? 2 shots isn't a lot. You could always take another week to try and make a better staff. Heck, I'm sure you'll improve their use when you get a bit more comfortable with how you manufacture them." "I'm sure you're right, but that still won't be enough to get us to 3 shots. Don't worry though, we'll be hunting these my way." "Well, if it's your way, it should be fine. But will Thera get any practice with her magic? Not to worry. I have a simple strategy that's going to rely pretty much entirely on her magic, with just a little help from me. He told them, grabbing the staves, a small sack, and a shovel. What exactly is your way? Ben was going to explain, but Falk cut him off. The boy's just going to play to his strengths. Try and learn what you can. You're really overselling me here, Falk, but it's going to be a pretty simple plan. It will be maybe an hour of setup tops when we get there, so let's go. This doesn't really feel like adventuring, Thera said while on top of a tree branch. If it gets the job done, that's all that matters. Now don't be too loud. Don't want to scare anything off. Ben explained the strategy to her on the way there, while also giving her a rundown on how he would usually hunt in general. The plan was focused on the only way he could hunt any creatures, trapping them. As soon as they got there, Ben asked her to use her magic to pull a ball of earth from the ground, making a hole about 6 feet deep and wide, then carefully placing the dirt in a pile beside it. It took more work to pull a mass of earth to make a hole than it did to gather loose earth into a bullet, but it was still within the abilities of both Thera and the current staff. From there, it was his turn to get to work. Just having a deep hole wasn't enough. It wasn't like the Skrells would just throw themselves inside it for no reason. So he had to dig out one of the sides, making a small ramp in for any curious creatures. That's what ended up taking the greatest bulk of the time. In hindsight, he should have brought another shovel to get Thera to help with the digging since her earth magic wasn't precise enough to make a ramp. But what's done was done, no point focusing on it. Once his digging was finished and he found himself a fair amount more tired, he started a small fire with a magic lighter he bought and began roasting some flail bird he got from a local butcher at the bottom of the pit. If the archive records on them were right, then this should be a Skrell's favorite prey, and the smell of it cooking should attract any others that were in the area to come try and grab some. It ended up being pretty similar to his Amarok hunt, but ultimately an animal was an animal. Food would always be a driving force. Not to mention that they had a good chance of grabbing a bigger number of Skrells this way. Once setup was done, they both climbed some nearby trees and sat on their own branches. All that was left to do was wait. Thera seemed impatient. This certainly wasn't how she was used to hunting, but Ben was happy to use this time to relax. He had brought a few good-sized stones up with him and was doing some sculpting by carefully breaking away parts of them using his enchantment and crafting. The end result was far rougher than if he had the proper tools, but it was a good way to pass the time and train his skills. The only real downside to being stuck in a tree in the woods was the bugs. He would be coming home with a few bites for sure. Or would he? An idea flashed through his mind, and seeing a bug land on him, he immediately tried it out. Keeping himself steady with one hand on the branch, he activated his Connect skill, hoping that he would drive it off with the sudden exposure to his mind, but something else happened entirely. He felt a sudden sense of calm and a brief flicker of hunger coming from the bug before the hunger disappeared. The bug hadn't flown off though, it had died. Ben was initially surprised but thought back to what Myriad said when he got the skill and tried to use it on him. Maybe in the same way that he was weaker than a god, an insect was weak enough that it couldn't properly handle his feelings. Killing it? If that was the case, then he would at least be able to get a bit of practice from using it on bugs. But would that really be enough to improve his skill level? It was at least better than nothing. He lifted his hand to swat away the tiny corpse when the sense of calm he was feeling vanished as well, causing him to pause again. He hadn't noticed it wasn't his own emotion he was feeling, but the sudden loss made it clear it came from the connection breaking, much in the same way it felt when Falk pulled away after he first tested the skill. The only problem was he didn't know what he had connected to. He looked around and felt his body, wondering if perhaps a bigger bug had landed on him but taken longer to die or fly away. But if that was the case, wouldn't he have felt some sort of distress from it? He was at a loss until it occurred to him. He had been touching the tree. He had to test it out again. Placing his hand on its trunk, he once again activated his connection and experienced a feeling of calm wash over him. As that happened, his excitement spiked, and after a minute he felt the tree gently respond to it. It was slow, but it felt as if its mood was picking up from neutral to something else he couldn't quite identify. The discovery left him elated. This was it. This was how he could train his Connect skill without needing another person to help him. Thinking about it, he could always get a pet as well, but a plant would be so much less effort, not to mention the lack of guilt of using the skill in case it has any negative effects on it. He still wasn't sure it would have any real practical use, but it would be a shame not to level it a bit and see. At the very least, it seemed to make a decent bug killer. He proceeded to spend the next half hour using his skill to get acquainted with the tree. It wasn't really a conversation, just an exchange of feelings, but it was still interesting to probe at it with his emotions and see how it would respond. He tried to send thoughts to it directly, but at least at the moment that seemed impossible. In that time he got the impression that even though the tree was alive and able to experience some external stimulus, its feelings and range of emotions were significantly more limited than he would expect an animal to be, but there was still so much to figure out. It was as he was experimenting that Thera whispered at him to grab his attention. "Hey, they're here." A small group of Skrells were approaching the cooking meat. They were cautious at first, but once they saw it was unattended they raced towards it, with a few of the more cautious ones that were hiding farther back running to catch up. Soon enough there were around a dozen in the hole, each fighting the others for some of the scraps. It was time to finish it. "All right, Thera, you got this." She gave him a nod and grabbed her staff, carefully activating her magic and directing it at the pile of earth, trying to make it do just one thing: shift back into the hole. It was a task she normally wouldn't have bothered with, but it was also significantly easier on her than trying to make a proper earth bullet. The dirt quickly slid across the ground, filling the hole with all of the Skrells in it. For good measure, she used a bit more mana to press down into the earth, making sure nothing would crawl out and resulting in her staff breaking into fragments. "That was easier than I expected," she said when she was done and had dusted off her hands. "But can my magic actually get better like this? Easy is good. Why work your butt off for one kill when you can score a bunch? As for your magic, who knows? But from my perspective this doesn't seem much different from when you shoot an earth bullet. It's all just moving earth around. The only thing that's changed is the intent. Anyway, let's give it another 15 or 20 minutes for the smell to disappear. Then can you dig out the hole again?" "Sure. Are we hunting more?" "No, I didn't bring enough meat for that. This was really more of a proof of concept. My goal is all those buried materials we got, 20 Skrell corpses. Even if they were small, with the amount he had he would be able to make plenty of weapons boosted with their fire affinity from the bones and at least some fire-resistant pouches from the skins. Plus now that he had a way to quickly make Thera a few adequate staves, he would have a lot more time for his own training." Things were looking bright. After he piled up the corpses in his bag, they quickly walked out of the forest to a clearing near the town, where Ben stopped to dismantle them. He separated the bones to dry out later and the skin to tan, leaving him with a pile of organs and meat that he unfortunately had nothing to do with. From what he understood, they weren't great to eat, but throwing it away also seemed like a waste. He decided to bury it for this time at least and try to find something to do with any extra meat later in the future, rather than continue to let it go to waste like that. Once that was done, they quickly walked over to the Adventurers Guild to report their kills. Ankh seemed to have the day off, so it was reported to another employee, with the grand result being Thera getting 90% of the kill, leaving Ben with 10, though since they were acting as a team they got to decide how to split the rewards themselves. "Why did he only get 10% of the kill?" she questioned the employee. "He made the plan that got us all of them? I mean, even when I get right down to it, aside from what was really a simple strategy, all I did was dig a little. You ended up doing most of the work. It wasn't like he even cared about raising his rank at all. It sounded like while it could provide some more opportunity, it would also add some responsibility, which he wasn't really into the idea of." "Well, we'll still split the reward in half," she instructed the guild worker. "You sure? I really didn't do too much. It's fine, you need money more than me anyway, and I wouldn't want people saying I'm greedy on top of everything else anyway." "Well, I'm not going to fight you on that then." With their work done, they left the guild. Ben asked her for a bit of help before parting ways for the day. "Hey, by any chance do you know if there's a place I can buy plants around here? I think the general store near the clinic sells some. I guess it's not out of my way, so I can show you." "Why though?" He went on to explain the little discovery that he made while they were in the forest and figured that buying a plant for his home would give him a convenient way to practice. "So you can pick up emotions from plants? That seems a little odd. Do you think your god would approve of you training your skill like this though? It sounds like it should be used on living things. Plants are alive even if they don't do much, and it may have been given to me, but it's my skill now. If he doesn't like it, he can deal. The attitude surprised her a little. Most people who would be lucky enough to get a gift skill would care a little more on their god's opinion. But it wasn't her place to say. Besides, there were plenty of gods who liked the strong-willed as well. So they chatted a bit until they got to the store and parted ways. Oh really? I was a little curious if you would say I was using it wrong like this. Good then, hopefully I can find some more I can use it for. In the meantime, any thoughts on what sort of plant I should buy? The shop he was at did have a small garden section, with seeds and a few nicer potted plants that were a little more exotic than what grew normally in the area. Pass. I want something I can practice with immediately, so it has to be something already mature, preferably that will live a while too. The one Myriad was talking about was a potted tree about 3 feet tall with lovely purple leaves and looking like the berries were about to develop. It looked nice enough, and he had a window in the place he was renting, so it seemed like it would be as good of a choice as any. With his decision made, he paid the shopkeeper, grabbed the plant, and went on his way. Myriad suddenly said as they were chatting while he walked back to his home. He suppressed his first instinct to look around him and continued on his way, though changing course so he wouldn't end up at his home. What do you mean I'm being followed? Am I about to be mugged? He wasn't on the main street, but he was close by, and it seemed like it would be a pretty bold thing to do in the middle of the day. Are we sure this isn't just Thera? He still had no clue what she looked like without it. Why? Jesus Myriad, could you lead with that next time? The urge to look around or just run became even greater, but he was still trying to appear casual. What should I do then? Great. The day had started off so good, and now he had to avoid getting stabbed. He walked a bit down the street before taking a turn that would get him towards the main road where there would be more foot traffic, hopefully enough to deter his pursuer, when Myriad spoke up again. He could hear the sound of footsteps slapping against the road behind him, but he didn't waste the second it would take to turn around. He immediately followed his god's orders and ran like his life depended on it. His agility attribute was low, but he pushed it for all it was worth, and felt his heart hammering in his chest, the pounding in his ears making it so he couldn't hear any noise around him. He was entirely dependent on any warning Myriad could give him. It was only a few minutes of effort, but his sprint got him to the main street. Why? He thought as he panted for air, drawing looks from the people around him. I'm literally just carrying a plant and some staves. He was still carrying the ones he made for Thera. Since she always had the one fork made in case of emergency, there was no point in lugging around a bunch of inferior products after all. Alright, don't carry a bunch of valuables. Noted. With that bit of excitement out of the way, he found the nearest town guard and gave them a statement, including the description he got from Myriad. They were frank that there wasn't much they could do, but they would keep their eyes out for any similar cases and then offered to escort him to wherever he needed to be. So he got them to walk him back to Fox's shop. Once he got there, he explained what just happened to his teacher. Well, it's good you're all right, boy, but maybe you should learn some offensive skills. It isn't great that you could be attacked in the middle of the day and have no way to protect yourself, especially if you're going to be doing some hunting anyway. He told his student with some worry. It was just some bad luck. I guess I look like an easy mark. Besides, you know I'm not suited to combat skills. True enough. Well, just make sure the shop's locked while you're practicing at night. Would hate to find your corpse when I open in the morning. And I'd hate to be a corpse. Don't worry, Falk, I always lock up. Besides, what are the chances of this happening again? Thankfully, over the next month, there were no repeats of the same event. Ben continued to split his time between practicing his skills and hunting with Thera, and after dismantling enough corpses, he even raised that skills level up to 1, making him slightly more efficient. He was still practicing making different equipment at the shop and working on his general techniques, and would still spend a bit of time trying to figure out how to improve the quality of Thera's staves. But aside from some small improvements here and there, he still couldn't make it to the coveted 3 spells. He was determined not to give up, but that didn't mean he could neglect learning other things, some of which led into their hunting activities. All right, Thera, take the shot. This still feels wrong. Can't we hunt like regular people sometimes? I would rather not get killed trying to fight fair with a monster. You're the one who was worried about if you could improve your magic just using pit traps, so I spent weeks experimenting and testing to make this. We can debate the ethics of it after you fire your spell. She let out a sigh, knowing there was not going to be any arguing with him. For the last couple weeks he had been experimenting and testing what he was calling a bear trap just so she would be able to practice her offensive spells, and now they had a blood elk caught in it, one of its legs trapped in the tool's metal jaws as it desperately tried to pull itself free, a small aura of darkness wrapping around its form as it tried to hide from any other predators, namely them. She knew the creature could and would kill them if it had the chance, so she put her hesitation aside and raised her staff, aimed her spell, and left a mangled mess where the body landed. "Well, looks like I'm not getting any materials from that," Ben said, looking at the crushed pile of meat and bone, a leg still caught in the trap. "Sorry." She knew he used what they caught as materials. Wasting something that big, just so she could practice her magic, was admittedly a bit selfish of her. Though Ben didn't actually mind. "Don't worry about it, the sooner we raise your level the sooner you can have better control of your magic. I've still got a ton of other materials to use." He especially had more Skrell bones than he knew what to do with from their first few hunts together, as well as plenty of materials from some harder creatures. Once Thera got used to his way of doing things, it wasn't long before they started taking on rank 6 creatures. They didn't always succeed, sometimes they would escape whatever trap they set up or notice them and run away. But when that did happen, Thera got the chance to try and get it with one of her spells, so it still served as practice at least. "So do you have anything going on for the rest of the day?" he asked her. "Just helping a bit at the clinic." "Cool. In that case, want to stop by the shop a bit beforehand? I was hoping to get your opinion on a few products I've made recently." "Can't my uncle help you?" "I already heard his take. I just wanted to get a second opinion before I try and sell some stuff at the market." "All right then, sure," she decided after a moment's hesitation. "If it won't take too long, I don't mind." "So what sort of weapon did you make then?" she asked as they got to the shop. "Not a weapon, just some toys." "Why would you make toys?" she asked in confusion. "This is a weapons shop." Falk overheard their conversation and chimed in. "It's good to try some different sorts of things when you're starting out, Thera. Just 'cause I mostly make weapons doesn't mean the boy will when he starts on his own. Besides that, I make other things too. Sonia just got a new pan not too long ago." "Okay, uncle, but I still don't see the point. If he's selling at the market, wouldn't it be better to make weapons like usual? Surely the price would be better than anything he could get on toys." "The point," Ben started, "is just to try making something different is all. Besides, if someone wanted to buy a weapon, they could come here literally any time. For the most part, the things I've made are pretty simple and easy, so if anyone wants to come order one, it wouldn't be much of a strain on us. Give me a second. I'll grab them." He ran to the back and pulled out a box of things, placing them on the table one by one to show off. He had made 6 types of items, 3 of which she recognized. "I'm familiar with the kite, spinning top, and lute, but what are the other 3? The remaining items looked like a plate made from wood and leather, a flattened ball with a slit running through it, and a strange cross with a ball attached with a string. "A lute, huh? I probably call it a children's guitar or maybe ukulele, but I guess lute works. Anyway, as for the other 3, there's a frisbee, a yo-yo, and a kendama. I want you to realize that doesn't actually tell me anything." Sorry, let's start with the frisbee. "Do you have a minute, Falk? I can spare a couple, lad. Need a hand demonstrating?" "Yep, catch," he said, throwing it towards his teacher, who gracefully caught it from the air before throwing it back to Ben. "So you just play catch with it? Like a ball?" "Well, yeah, I guess if you put it that way, that's all there is to it." It was a good way to use up the leftover Skrell leathers, since it's just a light wooden frame wrapped up to be easier on the hands. "But do you think it's too simple?" "No, it seems fine. It does look graceful flying through the air like that, so I think it will sell if it's cheap." "What about the other 2? "All right, let's go with the kendama next. So this is sort of a catching balancing toy, I guess. The point is to hold the base and try to land the ball on one of the sides or the spike at top." He tried a couple times to demonstrate but failed to successfully land any of them. "If you can't even do it to demonstrate, how can you expect anyone to want to buy it?" she asked while watching his failed attempts. "Told you," Falk yelled as he worked. Okay, you guys are right. Glad I only made a couple of them instead of wasting a ton of time. In that case, the last is the yo-yo. Can you at least use this one? I'm actually pretty good with this one. An old friend taught me how years ago. His smile took on a sad note for a moment before he went back to a more animated expression, and he pulled out a bit of string that was hidden in the slit running along its circumference. He put the loop around his middle finger and threw it down, only for it to smoothly return, traveling back up the string and into his hand. After doing that a couple times, he changed to throwing it forwards, then spun it in a loop around his hand as well. It actually ended up being a bit fun to watch. Alright, that one actually has some pretty good potential, I think. But is it hard to use? She asked after seeing his display. It takes some practice to get it right, but it's not that hard. Want to give it a try? Sure. Cool, so all you're doing at first is repeating what I did. Slip it around your middle finger, raise your arm up like you're flexing, and bring it down. While it's at the bottom, just gently jerk your hand up, and it should return to you. She did as she was told and brought it down before jerking her hand, only for it to just sit sadly at the bottom of the string. That's all right, like I said, it takes a little practice. Just wind it back up and try again. She tried 2 more times and started feeling discouraged, wondering how much practice it would take. But on her 4th try she had her success. I did it! She rejoiced at her success, only to immediately be embarrassed at the enthusiasm she showed. If her face wasn't covered by her cloak, she would be clearly blushing for them to see. Luckily, Ben didn't seem to mind the outburst and was happy to cheer her on. Great work! It took me a lot longer to get it right when I was first learning. See, Falk, it doesn't take forever to master, he called out to his teacher. Bah! Thera's just talented. You can't hold the average man to her standard. Ignore him. He's just sore that he couldn't get the hang of it after 20 minutes of trying. Wanna try throwing it forward? She was already playing with it some more, so why not try her on something a little more advanced? Sure, I guess I can see the appeal of this. She was having a fair bit of fun, actually. It had been a long time since she had just stopped to play around, and it was a good change of pace from the usual training, hunting, and helping her aunt. Ben explained what to do, and she started trying again, getting lost in the task before succeeding in a few minutes. She repeated that throw and the new one a few times, making sure she got the proper feel for it before stopping to return it to him. You can keep that one if you want, I have a bunch. He had made plenty since they were easy enough and the material cost was low. Even selling them cheap, he could make a reasonable amount from the base cost, so he didn't mind giving one away, though Thera seemed to hesitate. I don't know. It's fine, Thera, he isn't thinking anything. Falk yelled out. Well, if you're sure, then I'll accept, thank you. No worries. So are you good to push hunting back to the afternoon tomorrow? I don't know how long it will take to sell this all, but if it takes too long, I'll just pack up. Sure, that's no problem. Your toys seem good. I'm sure they'll sell well. Well, thanks, I'm gonna go back to making more then. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Ben walked to the back of the shop where his work area was set up, and Thera was about to leave when Falk called out to her. Before you go, Thera, mind giving me a moment? Sure. What can I do for you, Uncle? I just wanted to ask, has the boy seemed okay to you recently? No stranger than usual, I think. Why? I'm pretty sure he's been sleeping less. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but his smile's been slipping more than usual, like he's struggling with something. How could he be sleeping less? Doesn't he already spend most of each night practicing here? I guess I have noticed he tends to hide his negative feelings a bit, though. It would happen a lot when he started talking about people he knew, like whatever friend taught him to yo-yo, but she didn't think too much on it. Sometimes people would have falling outs. She didn't feel like prying. Well, I'm a little worried anyway. By the end of the week, I'll have to leave the city for a little while to see a client. Do you think you could keep an eye on him while I'm gone? Maybe go with him to the market tomorrow and try and ask him about whatever's on his mind. Uncle, you know I don't like getting too close to people. Really? Seems like you two are getting along well, though. He even gave you one of those yo things. On that topic, are you sure he's okay, Uncle? This isn't the first time he's given me something either. What? What else has he given you? A little statue he made while he was training his enchanting and crafting. Oh, those, the ones he makes from random stones he picks up? That's fine, then he leaves them everywhere. It's actually a pretty clever way to practice. I don't think I know anyone who uses the destructive properties of enchantment like that. Actually, I should tell him to take a bunch to try and sell too. They're starting to pile up in the back a bit. But I got off topic. He's fine, you don't have anything to worry about. Maybe if you spoke to him openly, he could ease your mind. MHH. She was not at all fond of that idea. Well, either way, you've got your cloak, and like I've said before, his resistances are high. Trust me, you'll both be fine. So would you do this as a favor for me? All right then, uncle. I guess I can do it for you. There's a good girl. Now tell your aunt I said hello. He'll be setting up in the morning, so come early, okay? All right. I'll be here tomorrow. After waking up, Thera wiped herself down with a warmed bucket of water before getting dressed, donning her cloak, and preparing to start her day. Having made her promise with Falk, she headed over to the shop and prepared to spend the morning with Ben at the market as he tried to sell his wares. Honestly, she was a little excited for it. It wasn't often that she would actually go to those sorts of things since there tended to be more people around than she could deal with, but the few times she had been to one in her homeland, she had fun seeing all that was available. Of course, as a local market it would be smaller, with people selling their foods and handicrafts and whatnot, but it would still be a new experience. She also didn't want to admit it, but she was beginning to enjoy the company that Ben provided. Having worked together for a month now, it was the longest she had ever lasted in a party. Usually once other members saw how she struggled with her magic or heard the rumors about her, they would be quick to drop her, leaving her to adventure alone even if that was more dangerous. But Ben had stuck it out. Sure, he had an agreement with her uncle, but for the most part he seemed to be enjoying himself, and it was nice to have the company. She was still a little worried that he was being affected by her presence. Even if it was nice, just receiving 2 small gifts was enough to put her on edge. But if Falk insisted he was fine, then she would believe him for now. But Uncle should be done with his project in another month or 2, so I guess he'll go back to being the one to make me staves. I guess that means we'll stop working together. Although he also said I need to adventure with his apprentice until I can find a new party to join. Gods know I'm not going to have any luck with that in this town. So maybe they would be working together for a while longer still. As these thoughts floated around her head, she entered the shop and found Ben, sweeping the floor with a dead look in his eyes. Ben? Are you okay? She didn't know why she asked. He clearly wasn't at the moment. But she was caught off guard and didn't know what else to lead with. Hearing her voice, he jumped up and threw on a smile, as if he were going to greet a customer instead of talking with someone he'd been working with for a while. Thera. Good morning. Sorry I was lost in thought and wasn't expecting you here so early. Didn't we have plans to meet up after noon? Uncle Falk asked me to come help out with your table at the market, so I came early. Are you all right? Oh yeah, I'm good. I just didn't really sleep last night, so I ended up getting too focused on my cleaning, but I would love to have the help. I actually just finished loading a cart if you want to come set up with me. I was told there would be plenty of chairs there, so I don't think we need to grab any. All right, sure. It looked like her uncle was on to something, but she was no good with these sorts of things. She would just have to try and find a way to broach the subject as the day went on. With him already packed and ready to go, they headed out to the town square where the event was being held and found the table he had been assigned and started piling his items on top of it. About a dozen yo-yos, 30 or 40 frisbees, 3 small lutes and a bucket of tops were placed on top of the table, with the kites being stored underneath to save on space. Once that was done, he started piling up the sculptures he had been making in his spare time. There must have been around 50 of them, all around the size of a hand, with the details more well-defined than what he had given her after his first attempt. You've gotten better at this? She expressed after picking one up and giving it a look, though I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. Thanks, but my actual technique has only improved a little. I've just cleaned up the ones you see with a file and a small chisel to get some of the details right. As for that, his expression slipped again. It's an elephant. I guess there aren't any around here. She looked at the little sculpture to examine it. While there were similarities to other creatures, it definitely didn't look like anything she was familiar with. Having a round body, thick legs, large thin ears, and one of the most unusual noses she'd ever seen. How big are these supposed to be? Is it like a pet? Oh man, I can only say probably not. I'm sure there's probably some eccentric out there that would keep them, but they're way bigger than I am. I can't imagine how hard it would be to look after one. Are all of these creatures from your homeland? While plenty resembled animals she was familiar with, there were also a few that were foreign to her. Some are just from stories. She saw the sad look come to his eye again and decided not to put it off any longer. Ben, what's wrong? Now that her uncle made her notice, it was more and more obvious something was going on with him, and before she knew it, the words had slipped out. Nothing's wrong though? He told her, giving a confused look. Don't lie. Both me and my uncle can see something's been bothering you. He closed his eyes for a moment and sighed. Am I really that obvious? It's nothing really. I'm just a bit homesick. I realized the other day that my little brother's birthday must have passed by a couple weeks ago, and I didn't even notice. Then it just got me thinking about how my family's been is all. Homesickness. It was something she thought she could understand. Even if she came to a town where her aunt and uncle were, she would still miss her parents from time to time. If that's what it is, then can't you go see them? I don't mind if we can't hunt for a few weeks, and I'm sure Uncle Fawk would let you take the time off if you asked. It's not like you'll be running the shop while he's gone, so now would be the perfect time for a visit. He looked about awkwardly for a few moments and tried to figure out what to say before answering. That's not really in the cards for me. I'm not really keeping it a secret or anything. Fawk should know since I've shown him my card. But I guess we haven't actually talked about our races. Her blood ran cold and she tensed up. Why did that have to come up? Was his problem a racial one? She had heard some peoples would send their young on journeys of growth and self-discovery. But was that what was going on with him? And now that he was bringing it up, did that mean he was going to ask about her too? As if he was reading her mind, he let out a small chuckle. Wow, how thin is that cloak? I could actually see your shoulders tense beneath it. Anyway, relax. I kind of figured since you never take that thing off that you have your own circumstances you don't want to talk about, and I won't ask. She felt herself relax even as she flushed from embarrassment. Was she really that obvious? Thank you. So why does your race keep you from seeing your family then? Have you heard of humans? With hundreds of races in the world, it was easy to never learn about or encounter members of certain ones, let alone the endless potential mixed-breed groups. The world was large after all, and not all of them would form mixed towns like the one they currently lived in, but the name sounded familiar. Weren't people talking about that one a lot a few months ago? But why? She remembered why she had heard of them. When they first appeared in the world almost a year ago, they were all anyone in the town was talking about. Thera hadn't really cared herself, but there was a lot of excitement when some passed through to get to one of the nearby gates. Souls of the recently deceased summoned from their world in the hopes they could help save this one. She didn't know what to say to that. Of all the possibilities that had crossed her mind, this wasn't even something she had considered. Why would he be in this town? Shouldn't one of the nations have taken him in? Didn't her homeland take one or two in? If he went through all that, why was he alone here? No wonder he missed his family. She immediately wanted to reach out to him, to try and support him if she could, but she didn't know what to do, what to say. So She didn't know what she was going to say. She couldn't find the right word, but Ben ended up picking one for her. Dead. At least as far as my friends and family are concerned. Hell, I guess as far as my world is concerned too. What did one even say to that? I'm sorry, was all that ended up coming out. Don't worry about it, he told her, using a smile to hide how he was feeling. Did he always do that? I like this world. I've gotten to do and see all sorts of things I never would have experienced in my own. Seeing magic and using skills has been incredible. It can just be a little lonely from time to time. Of course you'd be lonely. I can't imagine. And I've just pushed away any attempts he's made to be friends. Would it really be so bad? Fox says I don't need to worry about anything happening with him, and I know he's a nice guy. Can't I open up a bit myself? On an impulse, she was about to speak up about her own life, to try and reveal why she tried to keep a safe distance. But he spoke up before she could, and her resolve passed. Anyway, that's a little bit about me. It looks like things are starting to pick up here. Think we should play with the tops or yo-yos at all to try and catch some people's attention? Sure. I have some experience with string instruments too, so I could try playing if you'd like. That would be great. I actually still haven't heard much music in this world, so I'd love to hear you play. Not enough bards come through the town. His happiness seemed so much more genuine at the thought compared to when he was talking before. She picked up one of the lutes and started plucking out a tune from her home as she lost herself in her own thoughts. Her life was always something she tried to keep private, but her uncle told her to try opening up and she trusted him. She would at least think about it. The morning passed by slowly. There were plenty of people who came around to browse, but they didn't get many buyers. It was clear their little shop was probably doing the worst. But they still got a few sales and were able to attract some kids with pocket money once they saw them playing with the toys they made. It annoyed Ben that his statues weren't selling too well considering the price was pretty low, but not many of the adults were giving his area a look, with parents occasionally coming to pull the children away. He had talked Thera into a small game of frisbee, although given that the table was about 6 feet long, they didn't have much real throwing distance to work with. Still, it managed to pass the time and distract him from the conversation they had in the morning. He hadn't planned to share his story, but it had felt good to get his feelings off his chest. Taking time to talk about your problems certainly helped, but now he had a new one. Thera had seemed uncomfortable since the conversation. He wasn't sure what to do about it, and he didn't mean to create a bad atmosphere, so he was at a loss. "I think I should go," she suddenly spoke up after passing the frisbee back to him. "Oh, sure. Sorry if my tale made you feel uncomfortable," he said, a little down that she was leaving already. "Wait, it isn't that," she yelled in a hurry to explain herself. "I think a lot of people aren't shopping here because I'm around. You'll probably have better luck if I go home." "Oh, is that all? Then don't worry about it. Plenty of kids are buying the tops and yo-yos. It may be disappointing that not many people are buying the statues, but I wasn't originally planning on selling them anyway, so it's not a big deal. But, well, if you want to leave, I won't stop you, but you shouldn't let others not liking you keep you from living your life, you know? For what it's worth, I'm enjoying your company." It was an embarrassing thing to say. She didn't know how he could manage it with a straight face, but she felt herself smile under her hood. "All right, I'll stick around. So what will you do with all the leftovers when the day is over?" "Probably store them in the shop. As long as people ask where our buyers got their toys from, they will hopefully direct them to me. It would be a nice way to get a little side money. Falk knows some merchants too, so maybe some of them would buy up my stock." "That's a good idea. Uncle has some good connections." They continued to talk like that for a while, just passing the hours with idle chit-chat and the occasional sale, when they were eventually interrupted by an unruly customer. "Oh, not now," Thera muttered under her breath, and it didn't take long to see why. "So you're still working together? This must be some sort of record for you, Thera," Sko said as he walked up to their table. "But you should still leave the guy alone before anything bad happens." "Sko, we're just trying to enjoy the market. If you're not going to buy something, then buzz off," she told him with an exasperated sigh. He was alone for now at least. The 2 women he was with when they first ran into him a month ago were nowhere to be seen. But Ben wasn't in the mood to deal with this. Still, he would be civil as long as he was a customer. "Pardon me, sir, but are you interested in anything we're selling? If so, I would be happy to help you out," he said with his best customer service smile. "Look, guy, I asked around. Your name's Ben, right? Why not come with me for a bit? Let's have a talk." "Thanks, but I have to mind my table and all. Is there anything I can do for you?" He saw a vein start to bulge on the 4-armed man's forehead as he tried to politely brush him off. "Look, man, I'm just trying to help you here. Thera's got her claws in you, and if you don't, I warned that bastard off multiple times. Whatever happened to him is his own problem," Thera almost shouted, full of indignation. "He may not have been a good guy, but you sent him off his rocker. The same thing's going to happen to this one if you stick around." Ben placed his hands on the tabletop and took a deep breath. It looked like things weren't going to end as peacefully as he would have liked, so he may as well get a rise out of him. "Listen, man, you're either a customer or a nuisance. If you're a customer, buy something, and if you're a nuisance, then get lost. You're blocking potential buyers." He tried to sound as rude and dismissive as he could to really get the point home, and he got exactly what he was looking for. "Listen, you dash," he started to say as he threw all 4 of his hands onto their table, before everything came tumbling down. The front legs of it broke, and all of the toys and statues he had made fell to the ground, most of them breaking in the process. Thera was outraged to see all of Ben's work be damaged and destroyed like that while Sko stood there stunned. She was about to start tearing into him, but Ben yelled out first. "Hey, are there any guards around? We're having a bit of an issue." Ben yelled, knowing full well there was at least one station nearby just in case any problems like this occurred. but it seemed there were also a few off-duty who broke off from their families to see what the commotion was. The one on duty looked at the mess of broken stone scattered around before turning to Ben. "All right, what exactly happened here?" Ben pointed an accusatory finger towards the man and told his tale. "This guy came up and started harassing me and my coworker before breaking my table. Look at this mess. How am I supposed to sell any of this now?" He tried to put on the saddest look he could while he stared down at the destruction of all his hard work. It wasn't hard, he was genuinely a bit angry at the moment. What matters is if it would pay off. The guard for his part was professional about the matter and listened to Sko's side as well. "And do you have anything to say about what happened? I didn't mean to break his crap. I just wanted to get him to stop working with the girl." "And why did that lead you to breaking the table?" "Gosh, I didn't mean to. I must have put in a bit more strength than I thought." "Huh. All right, you both separate but wait nearby. I'm going to talk with the other tables in the area and then we'll sort this mess out." He left to talk to the people in the surrounding area. Thera was simmering with rage, and it looked like the girl Sko was with the first time they met ended up finding him. "Sko, what sort of mess did you get yourself into? We told you to just leave them alone today, didn't we? I just wanted to talk to the guy was all. I didn't mean for anything to happen," he said awkwardly. While they had their talk, the guard came back and pulled them together. "All right, after talking to the other tables, it sounds like you came to cause problems. I don't care if it was an accident or not. Ultimately, you destroyed all of their merchandise. So I'll give you the option of either paying it off or performing however much community service it would take to cover the costs." "I'll pay. How much is it?" The statues were probably the second most expensive items on the table that broke, next to the children's guitars, and it looked like the kites were damaged too. At least the yo-yos and tops were fine, but it wasn't going to be cheap to pay off. He had been selling the statues at the equivalent of $20 apiece, with 48 of them smashed as well as the other things. He was looking at a bit more than the average weekly pay of a rank 5 adventurer. "Is it really that much?" Sko asked when he heard the price. "Looking at the guy's work, I would say you're actually getting a good deal," the guard said as he picked up one of the less damaged pieces. "There's some nice craftsmanship here." "Well, thank you," Ben said, not having expected the compliment. "If you're ever interested, come by to Fox Shop. I always have a few on hand." "I'll keep that in mind. So do you have the money?" Sko turned to look at his companions for a moment. "Think you could help me out a bit?" he asked the girls. They looked far from impressed, but they pulled out their cards nonetheless. "You're paying us back after our next few hunts. You really need to have some sort of savings in place. Don't just waste it all on new gear and booze." He stood there and took the verbal lashing from his companions as they all tapped their cards against Ben's until the necessary funds were added. With that done, Sko and his team turned to go before the guard stopped them. "Not so fast. You covered the price of his items, but you still have to deal with breaking the table. That's town property and all. You have the same option, of course, pay it off or work it off. Either way, we need to talk to the event organizer." He looked even more defeated when he looked to his friends. "A little help, girls?" Instead, they completely ignored him. "What do you say we try the stall over there next? I hear they have good Krombus buns." "Sure. After let's check out the busker before his show's done. I've heard a lot of good things about his juggling act." And with that, they left hand in hand as their companion was dragged off to settle his debts. "All right, that was a lot funnier than I thought it would be." Ben laughed as he turned to Thera, who was still filled with anger. "How can you be so calm? He just broke all of your work." "Don't worry about it. Anyway, now that everything's sold, want to wander around for a bit?" She tried to suppress her anger. She had been looking forward to seeing the market, and she was just thinking that she should try harder to get along with Ben. If he had no problem with what happened, then she should try to move past it. They spent a couple hours looking around the different tables that were set up and ultimately had a lot of fun. Thera hadn't been to an event like that in ages, and Ben was seeing a lot of new food and art for the first time. When noon rolled around, they took their cart back to Fox Shop, and Ben grabbed what they would need for their hunt when Thera spoke up. "Are you sure you're okay with what happened? I still feel like if all of my hard work was destroyed like that, I would be pissed." Ben took a moment to think before speaking. Well, since we aren't at the market, it should be fine to tell you, but don't go spreading it around. I wanted it to happen. What? She asked in confusion. I piled up a bunch of enchantments on the part of the table legs near him. It was my first time doing it on an area I wasn't directly touching, so the mana cost was drastically higher, and it was a lot harder to pile them up in the right areas, but it worked out pretty well if I do say so myself. Wait, why though? She didn't understand how he could let the things he had worked so hard on break so casually. He held up 3 fingers and started counting. Well, he was mean to you, he was mean to me, and it seemed like a good way to make some money. Besides, now he'll think twice before causing us trouble again. She couldn't help it. Thera immediately burst into laughter to think that he did all that just to screw over Sko. It was the first time Ben heard it. Their afternoon hunt following the market hadn't gone exceptionally well. They were still using the bear traps, but trying to get a creature to walk into one took a lot more luck than the previous pit trap strategy. And Ben was still trying to figure out the best way to make different animals fall for them. The problem with using bait was that if he put it on the trap, they might get suspicious and walk away, or just grab it without putting enough pressure on it to set it off. Just putting it nearby was no good either, because any monster was more likely to walk around it than over it, but he was confident that after a few more hunts he would figure something out. For the time being though, they took a little walk along the river, trying to figure out where might make a good hunting grounds in the future. At least that's what they both pretended they were doing. Thera had spent most of their time in the woods debating whether or not she should try lowering some of her emotional walls and let Ben know more about her and why she didn't generally try getting close to people. If he knew and could still accept her, then maybe they really could be friends. Gods know it had been a long time since she'd had one. Ben, for his part, knew there was something on her mind at the moment. She had been distracted for most of their hunt and figured it would be good to let her sort out whatever she had been thinking on. He was more than happy to use the time to carve a few new statues while they walked. He was already pretty familiar with the area and had a good idea of where some of the smaller creatures could be found if one looked hard enough, but it never hurt to try and find some more. With how wild and unstable the world's ecosystem was, there was always the chance of some new monster immigrating to the area, and as long as it wasn't so dangerous as to kill any poor person to come across it, then there was a small reward for reporting it. But in his case, he was more interested in the materials he could get by hunting it. He hadn't been able to use anything really rare yet, and even though Falk kept some interesting stuff at the shop he could use, Ben was pretty sure he kept a supply of some really exotic materials somewhere that he wouldn't be tempted to put towards a staff that wouldn't last more than a day. He was happy to pass the time musing about what he would make when he got a little more money. His crafting skill was still low, but he had a lot of future plans growing in his head as his skills increased. He fantasized about a small and unrealistic list of things he wanted to see if he could make if he could get past his magic limitation, an actual moving picture, a golem, maybe figure out some modern weaponry for self-defense, a hot air balloon, and so on, when Myriad interrupted his thoughts in a panic. He didn't waste any time. Thera, my god, just contacted me and said we need to run. Follow me. He didn't know what was going on, but he wasn't going to doubt the urgency in Myriad's voice. He thought she would say something, but he started running, and she immediately took off after him. A message from a god wasn't something you just ignored. What's going on, Myriad? He thought in a panic. Wait, do you always watch me? How much privacy do I actually have? Myriad screamed in his brain before regaining some control of himself. Will that work? Wait, are they even after me? Thera's here too. Well, if they're after me, we could separate and Thera could try to run for help. Damn. How close are we to the nearest party? You don't sound too confident. Ben desperately wished they had one of his bear traps on him. They always left them hidden under one of the trees near where they hunted because it was a pain to bring them out every time, but he would feel so much safer if he could place it. Of course, he also wouldn't be able to run with it, and a creature that was so sight-focused would probably be able to avoid it, but he was running for his life. He didn't need to be rational. As he desperately tried to figure out what to do, he made a decision. Gasping for breath as he said it, he looked at Thera running beside him. Thera, send a quick prayer up to Myriad, please. She heard the urgency in his voice and did as she was told, but once done, immediately asked him why. That's not what I'm doing. Giving an explanation to Thera and assuming Myriad would hear what he was thinking as well, he explained. A god needs to be acknowledged to be allowed to talk in your head. If anything happens to me, Myriad will guide you to help. For now, Myriad, could you fill her in on what's going on? His god seemed to have hesitated for a moment before giving in, but Ben didn't have time to ponder why. From the way she almost missed a step, he assumed that she heard it too. This was probably her first time talking to a god. Given that, from what he knew, they usually weren't as chatty as Myriad tended to be, but he explained what was happening and let Ben listen as he repeated the explanation for her sake. When he got to the bit about it being a tamer after them, Thera muttered between breaths, "Oh gods, it's him." Ben couldn't let the remark pass. "You know who this is? Is this guy after you?" A quick nod of confirmation before she added, "Though he's probably going to try to kill you too." Not the time, Myriad. It didn't seem like he had bothered to share his complaint with Thera as well, given her lack of reaction. As they ran through the woods, the species of tree had begun to change to one that seemed a lot more comfortable growing closer together than in the surrounding area. But Ben had low hopes that it would help. It could be a large area, but surely anyone looking for them would find them soon. All he could do was try and find a place to hide, squeezing between trunks and trying to avoid some of the lower branches. This slowed down their progress significantly, but if they weren't going to be able to find anyone else, what choice did they have? As they moved deeper in, they found an area where the ground between the trunks was covered by waist-high shrubs growing around them. They could either walk through them and keep going or try to hide in them. "What do you think?" he quietly asked her. "We could try and lay low here or pass through. Maybe we could climb up a tree if we can find any sturdy enough. The branches on these ones look too thin though." He was cursing himself for not thinking about it earlier, but it was too late now. Besides, that would have definitely left them trapped in one place. He didn't have much hope of Thera's magic saving them. By the time their pursuers got within range, they would probably get to them before she could activate her spell. "Let's hide for now. Maybe we'll get lucky." He really doubted it, but without many other options, they walked down into the bushes and sunk down next to each other. Myriad said with a voice still filled with dread, "Thera," Ben whispered as low as he could to get her attention. "I don't know what you have against physical contact, but please try to ignore and take my hand. I have stealth, even though it's low. If I apply it to us, it should help at least a little." For a second he thought she would go for it, but she gave her head a regretful shake. With a voice filled with pain, she spoke back, "I'm sorry, I just can't." No matter how wrong it would feel, Ben was 100% sure Myriad was right. Even if he didn't remember his first death, one was enough. Besides, all he would be doing was breaking whatever small amount of trust he had managed to build, and he honestly had no clue how much of it he had even gotten from her. But that was the problem. No matter how small it was, he had spent over a month working hard to gain that little bit of trust. He didn't want to destroy it now, especially when it probably wouldn't be enough to save them anyway, so he gave another option. "Okay. Then what about letting me enchant your cloak? I'll activate my stealth, and when I'm done you should be able to activate it. Okay?" "That won't work," she told him with a voice filled with sorrow. "I can't regulate my mana well enough for most enchanted tools. I basically just break the enchantment." "All right then, I'll apply it and activate it for you. I'll just have to touch your cloak. I won't touch you, all right?" "Okay, do it." She laid her arm out on the ground beside him, and he grabbed her loose sleeve, about to start when he felt something, an enchantment already laid on it. Why would this be here if she can't even use it? He thought to himself before ultimately brushing it away. From what he could tell, it was a weak one. He couldn't even guess what it could be for, so he decided to ignore it for now. Instead, he focused on the task at hand and started. He activated his stealth and felt his mana move through him as he started to try and lay it over the cloak. He was trying to be as fast as he could. Every second counted here, so he stretched his energy to try and place the entire enchantment at once. It was then he felt a problem. Something he was deeply familiar with from all of his times using his skill to carve statues. He felt the enchantment break, along with the material it was being attached to. Long strips tore into the cloak, and he heard Thera gasp as he panicked himself. "No. Why now? I haven't accidentally broken enchantment since I first started using this stupid skill." He was torn somewhere between screaming, crying, and needing to apologize to Thera when Myriad's panicked voice tore into his mind. The sound of stomping feet and breaking branches suddenly filled the forest, and Ben didn't have time to ask how it was attracted. He looked at Thera and saw her panicking. the white skin of her arms peeking through some of the tears in her damaged cloak. He took a breath and prepared himself. Thera, run. I'm going to try something, so have Myriad direct you to help. She looked over to him, face still obscured despite the panic in her voice. What? No. You'll die. There was no time to argue about it. He stood up and faced whatever approached. Time would tell how this would turn out, and he began to truly lose himself in his feelings. He panicked. He didn't want to die. He knew there wasn't going to be a third chance at life, and he was afraid. He never saw the few friends he had in the world. He didn't want to go through the pain of something trying to eat him. The first time had been bad enough. He didn't want Thera to die. This stupid thing found her immediately after he broke her cloak. There was no way the two events weren't connected. He didn't want to die without making an impact. He needed to show all the bastards who decided he didn't have any worth that they made a mistake. Iden Twantity, Iden Twantity, Iden Twantity. A creature broke through the woods, unlike anything he had seen yet in the world. As big as a horse and with hideous rubbery gray skin. It ran towards him on 6-pointed legs and stared at him with dozens of horrifying mismatched eyes, none of which looked like they belonged to the same creature, before it opened up a jaw as wide as his head and lunged at him. Ben was scared to death. He had worked himself into a panic and was reaching an arm out at it as if that could stop it. But the monster chose to ignore it entirely, instead gouging its teeth into his unguarded torso. In the back of his mind, he thought he heard Thera scream. None of it mattered to Ben, though. The moment the beast pierced his flesh, he connected to it. All of the panic, the fear, the regret, the pain. Everything got transferred over to the Alseer, and the monster clearly wasn't prepared for it. Almost immediately it let go and began to run in the opposite direction, as if its life depended on it. At least it certainly thought it did. He briefly thought he heard another voice in the distance yelling at it, but Myriad was also screaming in his head and Thera was above him. Apparently he was on the ground. Had he fallen when the creature tackled him or after? Holding his thoughts was getting hard. He was pretty sure Thera was saying something, screaming it really, but he couldn't make out the words. As he gazed up at her above him and thought he could just barely make out some of her features before everything slowly faded to black. Ben felt himself begin to come to consciousness. The pain was still there, but he decided to take that as a good thing. Pain meant he was still alive after all, and it had at least gotten weaker than when the Alseer decided to try and make a meal of him, but he still didn't want to move much at the moment. He felt the softness of a bed beneath him and opened his eyes a crack to look up at the ceiling. Something seemed familiar about it, but he was still in a daze. It was hard to say for sure. He turned his head to the side to try to see where he was, when he found himself in a room with an albino gorilla quietly reading a book in a chair beside him. No, not a gorilla, a yeti. Fuck! He quietly croaked out. His throat felt dry and it was hard to talk. How long had he been out? His teacher's head jerked up when he heard his name and looked at Ben, before running to the door and yelling, "Sonia! Thera! He's awake!" and rushing back to his bedside. Ben could hear the sounds of footsteps hurrying down the halls before Sonia burst into the room. He thought it was strange. He was sure he had heard the sound of more than just one person, and apparently she had thought the same. When she found she had come in alone, she marched back to the door, reached out and dragged someone inside. Took a moment for Ben's mind to work out what and who he was seeing. At first he thought he was seeing a statue of a member of Sonia's race. Skin that looked like it was made from genuine marble and solid gold eyes lacking whites or pupils, with hair running just below her shoulders to match, and a thin tail wrapped around their waist like a belt. He wasn't originally able to put together what he was seeing. Why would a statue be moving or wearing fabric clothes for that matter? It took embarrassingly long for it to click for him before he looked into her eyes and spoke up. "I'm glad to see you're safe. Sorry about the cloak." She noticeably grimaced and ignored his apology, instead turning to the other two. "I told you he would be under my effects. I'll go hide on the other side of the house for now. Thera, it's perfectly natural for him to be concerned about you after what happened. Just wait here while we talk." "Ben, honey, do you know where you are?" Sonia asked, kneeling down to look into his eyes. "Pretty sure this is your house, right? I was brought here after my Skrell incident. Do you have any water?" He felt his throat rubbing against itself during that whole sentence. She grabbed a glass and filled it from a pitcher that was sitting just outside of his field of view. "All right, you seem coherent enough. Can you tell us what happened?" She gently questioned as he sipped on his drink. He went over the details he remembered in his mind before he started to talk. He explained how his god told them they were being followed while they walked by the river, how they had run through the woods, trying to get to some nearby adventurers but couldn't make it in time, so they had to try to hide. After that, trying to enchant Thera's cloak but messing up somehow and destroying it, and the monster, the Aesir, seeming to know where Thera was as soon as it happened and charging at them. Finally, he spoke about his desperate attempt to scare it off by working himself into a panic before connecting with the beast. "And after that I blacked out, but I'm alive, which is pretty cool," he said, trying to give a confident smile, though it probably turned out more like a grimace from his general discomfort. Thera spoke up to the other two. "See, he knew it was going for me, but he still stepped in and almost got himself killed. He's obviously being influenced by me. I need to go." "Thera, the boy isn't being influenced by anything," Falk told her. "Can you just talk to him?" "Excuse me," he spoke up. "What am I supposedly being influenced by?" Thera shifted about uncomfortably while everyone looked at her. Falk and Sonia clearly not going to give the explanation for her. Finally, she seemed to gather her resolve and spoke up. "Ben, I'm a half-breed, specifically half earth spirit and half succubus. My large mana and earth magic comes from my spirit heritage, but as for my succubus heritage, it gave me charm magic, and because of my large mana pool, it's significantly more effective than what a pure-blooded succubus would have. Without a resistance of at least 30 to it, you'll be taken in by its passive effects just by being around me. 40 if there's any physical contact. Usually this magic would just make people like you more and want to be around you, maybe be more open to answering your requests too. But since I have so much mana, those effects can also leave people mentally unbalanced and lead to an unhealthy obsession with me." Ben had a lot of questions now that she was finally being open with him, but he decided to put most of them to the side and focus on the matter at hand. "Wait, I don't think I'm obsessed with you. But charm magic wasn't even an option on my card? Is that some sort of unique magic or something?" Sonia explained to him. "It's a specialized form of magic, specifically dark magic." He was still not as clear-headed as he would have liked to be, but he thought he saw where this was going. "Wait, so my darkness resistance would apply, right?" He saw nods from the two women before he turned to Falk and asked in a bit of an accusing tone. "And why didn't you explain anything to your niece?" He gave a bit of a shrug before telling him. "Etiquette. Unlike a certain human that barged into my shop one day, most people don't openly share the entire details of their status with another. That's some very personal stuff after all, and in the wrong hands could reveal things you might not want others to know. If someone decides to share their status with you, you keep it to yourself." Ben sighed. He was pretty sure he had been told the same thing at the church, but he hadn't really cared. "All right, well, can someone tell me where my card is? We can sort this out right now." It seemed that he had been stripped down at some point and was only tastefully covered by a blanket. Even if one of the people around was the healer treating him, he wasn't going to go and bear all at the moment. Sonia went to a desk by the side of the room before taking it and handing it to him. He gave her his thanks before revealing the information on it and handing it to Thera. She scanned it for only a second before reacting to something completely different to what he had been expecting. "You're an apostle?" She basically yelled at him. "What?" Both Falk and Sonia yelled as well before looking over Thera's shoulder at his card. "So much for good etiquette. Boy, when in the infinite hells did you become an apostle to a god? I became Myriad's apostle right after you accepted me as an apprentice. What's the big deal?" Ben, discovering someone's apostle is about as surprising as learning someone you know is actually royalty. There's only a few thousand of them. Sonia explained. "Okay, I see what you're saying. But by that logic, shouldn't the fact I'm one of the 200 people that were summoned last year be more surprising?" "You're what?" Sonia yelled again, though this time it was only her at least, so he tried to put the matter to the side. "Okay, why don't we talk about how strange and unlikely I am later and get back to the matter at hand? Thera, if you want to look at the rest later, you can, but for now just go to my resistances." She was still looking at him funny but did as she was asked and scrolled down to look at his resistances. As soon as she saw them, she let out a small gasp. "There's no way," she muttered. "How could one person have resistances this high for every affinity?" She looked up at him and stared him in the eyes. "Is your darkness resistance really 85? Why not test it out for yourself? Is it okay to assume the main reason you don't like touching people is because of your charm magic?" "That's right." "Well then let's see if it has any effect." He held his hand out towards her and waited to see what she would do. She stared at it for a moment before slowly and hesitantly reaching out to him and gently taking his hand. Even though Falk and Sonia believed it would be fine, they still waited with bated breath. "Feeling fine so far," he told them. "Charm wouldn't be very effective if a person realized they were charmed," she replied with a shake of her head and a thoughtful look on her face. "I would need you to do something you wouldn't normally do." She thought on it for a moment, still holding Ben's hand, before giving him an instruction. "Punch Uncle." "Hey!" Falk yelled at this, but they both ignored him. Ben looked down at their hands briefly before answering. "Thera, you can't ask something so tempting after I find out he's let a misunderstanding stand between us for over a month. I'm going to want to do it." Still, he contained himself to prove that there were no passive effects taking hold over him, though Falk still wasn't happy with the response. "Now what did I do?" Even Sonia had to chime in. "You could have at least mentioned to your apprentice that he might want to show Thera his card. He certainly doesn't seem to have any privacy concerns." "Is it so wrong that I wanted Thera to try and open up a bit herself?" he said in a huff. "The girl needs to learn to put some trust in others." "Well, maybe you're right," Sonia said after some thought. "And what's done is done. Hopefully now that they're more aware of each other's circumstances, they'll grow even closer." She smiled and gave them a look as she spoke. Well, not so much them, but the fact that they were still holding hands at the time. When Thera noticed her cheeks flushed a light gold, making Ben wonder if that was the color of her blood as well, before she let go and took a couple of steps back. "Well," she started, not making eye contact after being embarrassed by her aunt. "I guess you really aren't under my influence, so that's good at least. Yeah, so when I'm in better shape we can go hunting again without worry." Plus maybe now she wouldn't be so hesitant around him, which he considered a win. But as he brought up hunting again, the atmosphere darkened and everyone grew quiet. Guys? What's going on? Don't tell me I'm going to be bedridden for a while now." He was still sore, but he thought he could move if he had to. "Well, quite a few of your bones were broken and you experienced some organ damage, not to mention suffered some deep cuts where you were bitten, but most of the serious damage has been treated. You were out for a few days and I had to call in all of the town's healers to look after you almost around the clock in that time. But you're out of danger now. After a few more days of treatment you should be completely fine," Sonia explained. "Oh boy, that sounds expensive." He winced. "Well, it probably would be, but I'm friends with all of the town's healers since we work together at the clinic, and I would never think of charging someone who almost died to save Thera's life. The issue is..." She trailed off, not sure what to say, before Thera took over. "The issue is me," she said bluntly. "I'm currently under house arrest." "What? Why?" "Using any sort of mind-altering magic on civilians or not properly containing a magic's passive effects tends to be illegal. Currently I've done both." She looked away and wouldn't meet his eyes as she explained it. "What? But we already established that your magic doesn't affect me. What's the issue?" "Boy, it isn't about the effect she has on you, but what she had on others. It isn't as bad as she made it sound. Things are just a little complicated at the moment is all." His teacher went on to explain what happened after he had blacked out that day. The tamer that set the Alcir on them had run off with the beast as it tried to escape, evidently worried about what could have been done to repel something that dangerous. But there was still the issue that Ben was laying on the ground dying. In an act of desperation, Thera dragged his body to the nearest party of adventurers that Myriad directed her to, and without having her cloak she charmed them. Given how easy it was, the party of 4 they encountered probably would have helped anyway. But that didn't change the fact that not only did she expose them to her passive effects, but willingly took advantage of it too, making a mage with access to some light magic drain almost all of their mana to keep him alive, while the other 3 members carefully picked him up and ran him back to the town and through the gates, all the way to Sonia's home. Thera passed many people in the streets as they ran there, and even though she didn't do anything intentionally to influence them, many of them were drawn to her, some even trying to follow them along. After such a brief exposure, their minds cleared fairly quickly, and thankfully the party she manipulated were more understanding, and even after no longer being under her effects were willing to let the matter go since it was to save a life. But the damage had been done. The guards had come and were prepared to arrest Thera on the spot. If it weren't for the sight of Ben bleeding out and Sonia desperately trying to treat him as she sent for more healers, they probably would have. But they were able to see there was something more going on than just a person with a passive magic running wild, and waited until Ben was out of immediate danger to get the whole story. Once everything was cleared up and all of the victims' minds were no longer distorted by the charm effect, it was decided that Thera would not be held liable for what happened seeing as she was attacked and trying to save a life, but that she would either be kept at home or was to return to the succubus nation of Analia until a time that she could get a new means to block her magic. Ben laid back down and stared up at the ceiling. So then this is my fault. Thera, who looked like she was trying to control her emotion up to that point, turned to him in surprise. What? Why would you think that? I'm the one who broke your cloak. It's what you used to block your charm, right? I knew I could feel some sort of enchantment on it, but I thought I could still apply my own and it would be fine. I have no clue what went wrong. Was I rushing too much with the enchantment? I could barely feel the magic in it, so I didn't think I would have to be too careful, but it looks like I messed everything up. You can feel the mana in an enchantment? Sonia asked, surprised. Well, yeah. I'd need to do that to be able to apply them carefully, right? Sonia's just surprised cause mana sense is usually developed at higher levels of a magic skill than what you have, but that doesn't matter right now. Don't beat yourself up about the cloak, boy, you didn't do anything wrong. It all comes down to the ways it's made, Falk explained. There aren't many ways to disrupt a passive magic effect. They all end up being either too hard or too expensive to make. In the case of Thera's cloak, it's a bit of both. The technique I used basically involved piling up fragments of skills instead of using the whole thing. Can't really tell you why it works. As far as I know, the person who discovered it did so by accident. But once you manage to pile up enough, it can disrupt passive magics like charm and fear. The issue is that even though it won't feel like it, the item that's treated this way is absolutely saturated with enchantments. Adding anything else will break it immediately. So it is my fault, he sighed. No, I should have realized. I just wasn't thinking. Thera jumped in, trying to take the blame herself. Both of you enough, Falk firmly said. Mistakes happen in the heat of the moment and you were being attacked. Stop beating yourselves up. Right? What happened to the guy who was attacking us anyway? You said he was after you, Thera? She seemed to want to retreat away even further but still explained what happened. That would probably be Roan, an adventurer that's been exposed to my charm magic. Thera went on to explain her connection to the man who attacked them. When I first came to this town to try to grow my skills by adventuring, things weren't as bad as they are now. My magic was a drawback, but I was able to occasionally form some temporary parties and work on my skills a little bit. But that all changed when Roan got his eye on me. Most of the other adventurers thought he was a piece of shit, and he worked solo if you didn't count the few creatures he had tamed. He also came from a distant nation, but his people are perverts who thought that having multiple wives was some sort of status symbol, so he was always making a move on the few female adventurers around, which included me. It was something I could brush off though until one day he grabbed my hand when I wasn't paying attention. She took a small moment to collect herself here, having gotten a bit worked up in her explanation, before continuing. From there I did everything right. I told him he couldn't make contact with me because I have a passive magic. I explained what happened to the guild so they could be aware in case he started acting strange, and they told him off. But he didn't take it seriously and thought I was just trying to brush him off, so he kept trying to get my attention that way. Guild employees would see, but a lot of them either never encountered someone with charm before or didn't appreciate how dangerous it could be to a mind, so they would just tell him off. They didn't really start taking the fact that it could be having an effect on his mind seriously until he started brawls with other people and loudly proclaiming it was to win my heart that they believed he was becoming unbalanced, and he disappeared after being kicked out of the guild for repeatedly disturbing the other adventures. Of course, at this point the adventurers all think my magic is a curse I've placed on him, and that they're at risk too, so they steer clear. That bastard! Fox spat. I should have cracked the bastard's skull last time he came to the shop instead of just throwing him out. Ben was in complete agreement. Causing Thera to be ostracized was too much when the guy went mad from his own stupidity and an inability to acknowledge a basic warning. What's done is done. I just don't get how he could have tamed an Alseer. That's a pretty powerful monster, and he was only an okay tamer, she said thoughtfully. Falk groaned and threw his head in his hands when he heard this. I have an idea on how it happened. Before I knew what was happening with you, he requested I make him a staff that could hold the highest level of enchantment that I could. He must have found an enchanter with a high level of the taming skill and gotten them to apply it. It would explain where he'd vanished to these last few months. I thought he went to his homeland, but the bastard must have gone to find an enchanter and the Alseer. Everyone relax, Sonia told them as she felt tensions rise again. We've already made the guards aware that it was Roan who probably attacked you, so he won't get into the town without being questioned. He was already known for his bad personality anyway, so there isn't much to worry about. The bigger issue is Thera's cloak. Falk, I don't suppose you'll be able to make another one before you leave, will you? He gave her a shake of his head. Not only are they hard to make, but I would need to get the right fabric as well. Otherwise Thera wouldn't be able to see when it covers her face. I could at least start a temporary one with a worse quality material I have on hand, just in case of an emergency, but I don't think I could get it done before I leave for my client. He stopped regretfully before changing to a more thoughtful look. Of course, it's not like there's no one else who could do it. Maybe someone who's going to be bedridden for a few days, and even when he's better won't have much else to do since the shop will be closed and his adventuring partner will be occupied. Of course I'll make it. Show me how and I'll start immediately. Ben still felt responsible. If he could at least help a little, then he would do it happily. His teacher gave him a smile. Good lad. I'll run to grab some materials, then give you a quick lesson. And I need to go back to the clinic now that you're awake, Sonia said. When I get back tonight, I'll work on treating your injuries some more. But you'll be with us for a couple more days. Hey Sonia, I'm sorry to make this request after you've been working so much to heal me, but if I give you my address, could you stop by and give Frederick some water? Or maybe bring him here if it's not too much trouble? Ben asked as she was walking off. Oh gods, you have a pet. The poor thing's going to be terribly dehydrated. I'll go right away. No, wait, he said awkwardly. Frederick is my houseplant. In that moment he felt like could have heard a pin drop from the sudden silence that filled the room and the panic that had filled Sonia when she thought his pet was probably dying evaporated from her body. Thera was the first to break the silence. You named your plant? Yes, and cut me some slack. I don't have any other way to train my connect skill, and it's not like I live with anyone else. Giving it a name made it easier to talk to. You talk to it as well? Falk asked. It responds a bit stronger to me if I communicate with it while connected. Please give me a break. The other three gave each other a look and mercifully decided to let the matter drop. Ben regretted bringing it up at all, but it would need to be watered and it was his plant, damn it. He had some emotional investment in the thing. With that done, Falk left to grab the materials he would need along with a pile of books Ben could read while he was gone, and Sonia left for the clinic after promising to grab Frederick when she was done, eventually leaving him and Thera alone in the room. At a certain point after Falk had stood up, she had taken the chair in the room and sat in silence. Ben thought she might be wanting to talk about something else, so he waited for a few minutes before deciding to just broach the topic himself. Something else on your mind, Thera? She fidgeted for a moment, trying to find the words she wanted to say, before speaking up. After you're better, I'll talk to Uncle. He shouldn't make you adventure with me anymore with all this going on. She was frowning and wouldn't meet his gaze, but Ben had a pretty good idea of what was going on through her head at the moment. I see, he started. Do you not like working with me? He didn't really believe it was the reason, and she confirmed it a second later with the shake of her head. That's not it, but Roan's a violent guy, and if he gets into the town you would be putting yourself in danger for no reason by being around me. Not to mention that ever since these curse rumors started to go around, Uncle's lost some business since it's pretty obvious to people how often I'm there. If you plan on starting your own shop one day, working with me could be a disadvantage to you. Well, first of all, I would never open a shop in this town. That would feel way too ungrateful to Falk for teaching me. Plus, I don't care what other adventurers think. You're the only one I really know in that crowd. As for Roan, well, I feel like you're in more danger than I am. I don't want you to encounter this guy by yourself after all. But more importantly, he paused to gather his courage for a minute. He was about to say something embarrassing and really hoped he wouldn't look as stupid as he felt saying it. I'm still hoping we can become friends. What? She asked, shocked by the unexpected proclamation. His ears were already burning, but he wanted to explain himself. See, it's just, like I said before, I don't really know many people in the world, and I think you're nice. Plus, I feel like we already get along, and now you know I'm not going to be affected by your magic, so I would still like to adventure with you if you still want to work with me. He trailed off, his face burning and not even looking at her. After some silence, he was worried that she had run out of the room in disgust and worked up the courage to see her reaction. But she had hid it from him by burying her face in the covers of the bed he was laying in while he made his spiel. Terra? He asked uncomfortably. He honestly felt maybe her running out would have been better than the silence that had fallen. At least that would be an answer. Okay, came a muffled voice from his sheets. Yes, I want to be friends with you too. Gods, how can you comfortably say something so embarrassing? She sounded like she was dying from being so upfront about her feelings. I wouldn't describe how I felt as comfortable by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't know how one's even supposed to make friends with people, okay? Is it just like you spend enough time with someone and slowly get to know each other only to eventually realize you've both become friends? She was quiet but still didn't take her head out of the blankets when she spoke again. Well, I guess from that definition we're already friends then. It was maybe 15 minutes later that Falk came running back into the room with a crate full of supplies and books, only to see that Ben was still blushing and Thera still had her face buried in the bed. Am I maybe interrupting something? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Nothing, uncle, Thera said as she jerked upwards, her face flushed gold. We were just chatting while we waited. Now come on, let's get started. He would have been willing to go up against the Alseer again to dispel the current atmosphere. And thankfully Falk was merciful and let the matter drop. All right, boy, get ready for one of the most grueling tasks I've gotten for you yet. Here's some cloth and just do what I say to make a Fanadale cloak. Ben was handed a square piece of cloth, about 1 foot by 1 foot in size, and immediately had questions. Isn't this a bit small? And what does that name even mean? The fella who invented it just named it after himself, as creatives tend to do, and that's just for your practice while I'm still here. Make no mistake, brat, that small piece will take you almost a day to enchant if you're efficient. Prove to me you can manage it and I'll prep a full cloak for you to work on while I'm gone. He looked at the small piece of fabric in front of him. If this would be a full day, then how long would it be to make the full thing? It was a daunting question, but it would be a good challenge. Not to mention good experience for his enchanting. At the stage he was at, he wasn't using too many techniques more advanced than just layering them up. So what do I do? As I said before, you're just using fragments of skills. Not a single enchantment you add should actually be able to display its effects. It should feel more like making a sculpture from 1 grain of sand at a time, and much like sculpting with sand, if you're not careful the entire enchantment will collapse. This won't break your material, thankfully, but it could still signify a significant loss of time, especially if you mess up toward the end. Now what you're going to do is only use your skills for this. Don't enchant attributes or affinities. If I remember right, you only have 7, which is going to make it harder than what most people who have to make one of these will deal with, but it should be manageable. You're just going to pile up a fragment of skill at a time until the entire thing is saturated. But you have to make sure none of the fragments are touching fragments of the same skill or it will collapse. Do you understand? I think so. He was a little overwhelmed by the sudden stream of information, but also sure he would manage. Good. I'll be in town for a couple more days, so I'll stop by to see how you're doing, and if you need any advice. Last thing, unlike the way you currently do your enchanting, where you have to finish the enchantment all at once, this way you can at least take breaks from it, thankfully, since it's building it up for many parts, so you won't need to stay awake for a week. Now good luck, and check some of the books if you need to. With that done, Falk went back to his shop to finish up some of the work he was going to show his client and bid both Ben and Thera a good day. After he left, Ben immediately started to focus on how he was going to approach the task while Thera went to prepare lunch. He thought she would be gone for a while, but only a few minutes later she came back with a small plate of diced vegetables for the both of them. He happily took the plate and began eating but had to ask, "Are you a vegetarian by any chance?" She looked down sadly at the plate of food in front of her as she picked through it herself, letting out a regretful sigh. "No, it's just that this is all I can manage." "What do you mean?" "I can't cook all right." He hadn't been expecting that and immediately burst out laughing. "It's not funny," she said in a huff. "You try learning to cook something when your mana will strip the enchantments from the stove." He tried to contain his residual giggles. Admittedly, breaking any enchanted tool you try to use was a pretty good excuse for not knowing how to cook. Sorry, my bad. Do you mind if I use your kitchen? I should be able to whip us something up." Her eyes seemed to light up. "You can cook? What's there to be so surprised about? I have crafting, it comes with the package. But you're always eating at food stalls. I just like trying different things is all." "Then that would be great," she told him before calming down. "Wait, no. Uncle Fawk just said it's going to take you a day to work on this, and you're still recovering. I shouldn't waste your time. I feel good enough to move, and if it's already going to take a day, then what's another hour? Come on, show me your kitchen." "All right, let's go." She stood and waited for him to get up, but he didn't move. He cleared his throat and awkwardly told her, Thera, could you wait outside the room? I need to get dressed still." With the problem revealed to her, she quickly ran outside to wait. Another blush spread across her face. Ben idly wondered if she was always blushing under her hood, or if it was just going to be today as she got used to him. After getting up and dressed, Ben came to an important conclusion. When Sonia told him that he was out of danger but would still need a few more days to heal, what that meant was that his organs were probably better, but his ribs were still very much broken, and as soon as he started moving around he could feel the pain from them. Still, it was bearable, and even if he could be satisfied with a plate of vegetables, he wanted something a bit more substantial after being out for a couple days. He made his way out of the room and was shown the way to the kitchen by Thera, before he started rummaging around their cold box for ingredients, making sure to supply it with some mana after he was done so it would keep its power. He diced up some meat and started cooking it on the stove. It was here he had to take some care. With his low fire-based affinity, even using a fire enchantment could have a high mana cost, so he had to just try and keep an eye on it to make sure he would stay conscious. It seemed that since Sonia was the one who did the cooking and presumably had plenty of mana as a life mage, she didn't feel the need to spring for a stove with a fire affinity tied to the enchantment to lower the mana cost, and he was feeling it. While he was at the church still, Leahy had warned him about plenty of fools who had accidentally run out of mana while cooking and managed to burn their houses down or get themselves killed, and Ben was in no hurry to join their ranks. He would have to cook it a little longer than he would have liked to, but it worked out for his mana recovery. He just needed to have patience. Supposedly, he could also use his crafting to run mana through the ingredients to make them cook faster, the same way he could work with other materials faster by doing the same thing. But he hadn't gotten the hang of that yet, probably because he was so focused on not using up all of his mana while he cooked. Once the meat was almost at the level of doneness he added the veggies that Thera had cut up to soften them up a bit, while adding just a bit of water to the pan as well as some spices. He would have liked to make a thicker sauce for it, but he wasn't familiar with some of the ingredients they had, and they lacked others he usually used, so he couldn't get too creative. But still, it was done. Thera pulled out a couple of bowls, and they dug into the stir-fry Ben had put together. "It's good," she told him as she wolfed it down. "If we don't have leftovers, I'm usually just stuck eating chopped vegetables when my aunt's working late." "Well, thanks. While I'm here, I can help out with cooking at least. Maybe we can get Sonia or Fawk to grab some of the ingredients I'm more used to or show me how to use the ones here. Then I can really get creative." "Sounds good to me," she told him as she continued eating. Ben smiled. Felt good to share a meal with someone. After eating and cleaning up, Ben went back to the room he had been given and started to figure out how he was going to try and approach this. Up to this point, he had never tried applying anything less than the totality of a skill, and he figured that would give him the most trouble, so he carefully attempted that first. He started to use his enchanting and decided he would try focusing on using a fragment of dismantling first, and got to work, trying to feel the way the skill was being laid down as he went. Aside from his usual method or any of the ways he had read about but had only dabbled with, this actually took more concentration. Even if he stopped placing the enchantment almost immediately, it would create a small area that properly had a significantly weakened version of the skill, much in the same way he would do when he was piling up enchantments to break a material for his statues. He just had to get smaller. The cloth now had 5 small sections enchanted with dismantling, a skill all but useless to have on a piece of fabric, before he finally got it right, creating a grain of skill that couldn't possibly affect anything else in a meaningful way. With that success under his belt, he was ready to start for real, but his practice created another problem he had to deal with first. Having practiced on the same fabric he was meant to enchant, Ben now had 5 sections he would have to remove the enchantment from, an application of his skill he understood in theory but had never tried before. After all, the basic means he used to enchant tools with his resistances wasn't complex enough to require correcting as he went, and when he would make statues, the point was for the enchantments to damage the material to get the end product. Freaking great, he thought to himself, and got to work, doing his best to remember how the technique was done and finding it coming back to his mind easier than expected. It essentially came down to activating his enchanting and using raw mana with it to pry it off. It was a tedious task, and the mana cost was higher than it would be to apply a skill or resistance instead, but his teacher only gave him the 1 sheet, so there was no wasting it. He didn't really think Falk would have any problem with giving him another, but it was a pride thing now. He wanted to get it done with the materials at hand. So he started his slow march towards completing his task. In the early stages, he tried to fail a few times just to see what would happen. He applied the same skill fragments beside each other, curious as to what would happen, and it caused them to combine into a bigger one, destabilizing the fragments around them and erasing the enchantment. It was a curious result. When he layered resistances in the past, it had never happened before, making Ben assume that the skills may be uninclined to exist in a partial state, but once whole would destabilize the rest. It would be worth looking into more in the future, but for now he was content to know what would happen should he mess up, and began focusing on the task in earnest. Even with his focus and a generally patient attitude, when it came to working on a task, he had to admit this was a bit too monotonous, but his teacher did say he would be able to take a break while he worked. He would aim for about an 1/8 done and then stop to have a little rest. So maybe he went a little longer than the 1/8 he intended once he got into his groove, having gotten about a 1/4 complete, but he really needed a break now. He had originally been counting the number of skill fragments it would take to make, but he gave up around 300 after he lost count. It was times like this he desperately wished he had access to some sort of portable music player. Supposedly there were some magical music makers, but they were rare and expensive, not something he could manage. He felt he had a vague understanding of how record players worked. Maybe once he got some time he could devote some trial and error to figuring one out, but that would be once he had a stable income, long after he was done making this cloak. On the other hand, he knew Thera played at least 1 instrument. Perhaps he could convince her to practice while he worked. He'd at least broach the topic later. As he took some time to lounge before getting back to work, his mind turned to someone who had been mysteriously silent since his awakening. The one he would have thought to be the most invested, his god. "Hey Myriad, you around? I didn't die, so what's going on?" Silence. Ben let out a sigh. He knew Myriad had other things he would do in his free time, though he really wasn't sure what they were, and he had been a big help to Ben. He probably wouldn't have survived without the warning or his gift skill, so he should really do something to show his appreciation. It wasn't like he had started his quest yet. Maybe he should start with getting him a new believer. After all, now that Thera had spoken to a god and he had tried to save her life, she would probably be receptive. Maybe he should go ask her. Came a shout to his mind, startling Ben. "Oh hey Myriad. I was wondering where you went. Go back a bit. Who are you talking about and what are you being punished for? Wait, why was it against any rules? She acknowledged you, right? What? We were literally being attacked. Where the hell was her god during all this then? Okay, if you say so, but I'm still not into it. So what's your punishment? So back to having no one in their right mind to ask then? Gotcha. You're right, sorry. Not sure how much you've been watching, but things have been a little stressful. Can't you just see it in my mind or memories?" Ben decided to file that away as something that could be useful later before getting back to the main matter, and told his god about the events of the last few days while he was unconscious and what happened after he woke up. Ben felt himself blush again as he remembered the embarrassingly honest exchange he had with Thera. Not really the main point here. Can you find this Roan guy? Okay, thanks Myriad. I'll try and figure something out. The connect skill did just save my life, so maybe there's an angle we can work there. Of course, that was a pretty specific situation and I still almost died. Pretty sure most people would prefer a skill that could save them before they had something sink their teeth into them. But I'll see what I can do. More hours passed and Ben made some significant progress when he noticed it was getting late and decided to go see Thera. He walked around her home to see where she could be before finding her in what seemed to be her bedroom, laying down with a book, so he gave a knock to get her attention. Hey Thera, any idea when Sonia will be home? I thought I'd throw together dinner as a thanks for patching me up. That would be great, she said and put her book down. She's usually home in about an hour. Do you want a hand? Sure, sounds good, thanks. With that, they made their way to the kitchen and Ben started to dig around looking at the ingredients before deciding on making a ranunul soup and some stuffed crab. Both dishes he learned while cooking at the church. He got Thera to cut all the vegetables they would need while he focused on assembling the ingredients and cooking. As they prepped the meal, they chatted about the day, Thera talking about the book she was enjoying and Ben discussing his progress on his practice and how he was understanding why the cloaks were hard to come by. It was hard to imagine too many enchanters wanting to make these regularly. Eventually, they moved on to talking about other things while they worked on the food and let the time pass until Sonia got back. When she walked into the kitchen, she was surprised to see them both at the stove, Ben powering it and working on a pan while Thera stirred a soup, and gave them a greeting. You know, usually patients are meant to rest and recover, but it does smell great in here. Oh hey Sonia. You could say I'm recovering from practicing my enchanting technique all day. It's super monotonous. Besides, I wanted to thank you for looking after me these past few days. And you even got Thera to help, she said with a smile. Hey, I help you sometimes, she spoke back defensively. She was a great help. I'm sure if we can ever find a stove that can handle her, she'll be a great cook. Anyway, it should be about ready, so let's eat. They set the table and all sat down before digging in. Ben asked about Sonia's day at the clinic and she asked what they had gotten up to before broaching another topic. So Ben, how exactly did you become an apostle? Sonia tried to bring it up naturally, though the curiosity had been at her all day. Yeah, I've never met one before, Thera added. It's nothing too exciting, guys. I'm pretty sure I got the role by default. How could you possibly get such an important position with your god by default? Thera asked. I'm the guy's only believer, so there were no other applicants for the job, I guess. As soon as I accepted Myriad as my god, it showed up as my title. Wait, you're his only believer? Sonia questioned. Ben, don't tell me you're involved with a forbidden god? As long as he's telling me the truth, then he shouldn't be. Ben went on to explain what his god told him when they first met, how he was the accumulation of his race's souls and how his race destroyed their planet rather than let the invaders get it. Thera and Sonia sat and listened with an intense focus until he finished explaining his god's backstory. Your god sounds insane, Thera remarked. Are you sure you want to worship a god composed of a group that would blow up a planet? Sonia asked. I wasn't super into the idea at first, but he's a pretty good guy. Chatty too. I get the impression he may have been lonely without any believers. If you say so, Sonia said a bit dubiously. Though I still think I'll check with the church to make sure he's telling you the truth. But on a different topic, this meal was delightful, Ben. Thank you very much. It's no problem. I'm happy to cook while I'm here if it can help out at all. And that brings up the next thing I was hoping to talk about. It should only take a couple more days to get you in top shape. But by then Falk will be gone, and I'll be busy in the clinic during the days, so I'm a bit worried about Thera being alone while Roan is still on the loose. I'll be fine, Auntie. Maybe you will be, but I'm still worried. Ben, since you're gonna have to take a while to make the cloak anyway, do you think you could work on it here? You're welcome to help yourself to whatever's in the house, of course, but I'll feel a lot more comfortable having someone else around. Sure. If you guys don't mind having me around, I'm happy to stay here for a while. With the shop closed, there won't be a ton for me to do other than work on the cloak anyway. Excellent. Thank you so much, she said with a glowing smile. And if it's all right, I have another bit of a selfish request to ask you as well, if that's okay? Let's hear it. I picked up your plant and it's just at the front door. You can bring it to the room later. But while I was grabbing it, I couldn't help notice all the paintings and drawings in your room. Would you happen to be an artist? I guess I'm something of an amateur one, yeah? Don't sell yourself short. I thought the portrait you have in your room was fantastic. Ah, well, thanks. He told her with an awkwardness that she didn't pick up, though Thera did. It's of my family. I thought it looked great. Is there any chance I could hire you to do a couple of paintings for me? Sure, after all you've done for me, I'll do them for free as long as there isn't a time limit. What were you wanting me to paint? I was hoping to get a couple portraits together with Thera if possible. Why? Thera asked with a bit of discomfort on her face. I'm not super into the idea of being stared at for hours to have a painting made. Because it would make me and your parents happy? She told her before turning back to Ben. Growing up, we could never commission any family portraits because we couldn't find an artist who could handle her constitution. So her parents would absolutely love it. Well, sure, I'll be happy to. If there's no rush, could I put it together after I get the cloak done? That will be great for us, won't it, Thera? Thera, for her part, could see she wouldn't be allowed to get out of it and let out a long sigh. All right, sure. Once dinner was done and they'd cleaned up, Ben went back to bed to work on the cloth while Sonia sat nearby applying more life magic to his wounds. Ben was interested in watching at first since the last 2 times he had needed treatment he had been unconscious, but it wasn't anywhere near as visual as Thera's earth magic, with only a small amount of light being produced by the spell, so instead he devoted his attention back to his enchantment, pushing the limits of his focus as well in the hopes he would get it done by tomorrow. Eventually, as he was working, Sonia left, though that fact was only barely acknowledged in the back of his mind, and the hours passed as he concentrated on his enchanting before stopping to get some sleep for the night. When morning came and he woke up, he got back to it immediately and was able to finish it in a little over an hour before he decided to get up and grab something for breakfast. After having more healing applied to him, he was feeling a lot better, though still not in top shape, and was feeling ready to face the day. He knew Fox should be by at some point to check on his progress and hopefully have a cloak ready for him to work on, and in the meantime he leafed through one of the books his teacher had brought while he ate. It was a book on enchanting, one he had already read, but at the time he had thought a lot of the techniques would still be outside of his reach, now though he wasn't so sure. He was fairly confident that he would be able to twist and weave his enchantments if he tried. Unfortunately, there just wasn't much reason to. A skilled enough enchanter could do some interesting things, from lowering the mana cost of an applied spell to combining different skills to get certain desired effects different than what an individual skill could be capable of. But given that he had no magic and only a few skills, none of which he could see any reason to use together, such a technique was currently meaningless to him. His greatest drawback was not having grown up in the world. While an average person may have developed around 12 or 15 different skills by his age, even if most were a low level just by living their life and having gone through a couple jobs by this point, he still only had a handful due to his recent appearance here. For his classmates it wouldn't have mattered. They all had powerful skills that weren't affected by their lack of others. But for his enchanting it was brutal. With the few he had he couldn't do anything complex with them, and the worst part was that he couldn't even get the most out of enchanting being a blessed skill. Normally for every level of enchantment you could apply an equal level of a skill, but he should be able to get 50% more than that. At his current level of 2, he should be able to apply level 3 skills, but enchanting was already one of his most powerful ones, meaning he couldn't even use it to its full potential. If he wanted to get more out of it, that really only left 2 options. Either he could try and get more skills, or he could try and power level up one he already had. Both options had their pros and cons. While getting more skills would be useful, they would all be stuck at level 0 for a while at least, and while power leveling a skill would have its benefits, there was no telling how long it could take. Not to mention the only skill he currently had that could be worth focusing on would be stealth, and as useful as he thought it would be to get it to a higher level, especially after their run-in with the Alseer, he didn't want to neglect his enchanting or crafting to get it up. He sighed and slouched back into his seat. He would at least try and find a copy of the Book of Skills and Acquisition Conditions from a merchant. He assumed it would be on the expensive side, but it would be immensely helpful to have the reference around, and now that he had been using his blessed skills for a while, he had a much better idea of what would be useful to him and what wouldn't. It was while he was dwelling on this, he heard a knock at the door, and with Sonia already up and at the clinic and Thera in no position to answer it without a cloak, he went to check it himself. Opening it up, he was greeted by his teacher, and they quickly went back inside. Everyone else busy, lad? Not sure a patient should be the one getting the door. Sonia's at the clinic already, and Thera's still in her room. Anyway, I completed the piece you gave me if you want to give it a look. Perfect. Then I'll give it a look over and show you the final step. Final step? We'll get to that when I see it. Come on now. At his teacher's prompting, he hurried to grab it before going back to meet him in the living room and have his work reviewed. Looks like you've got the technique down well enough. All that's left to do is seal it with an enchanting spell. Finally, something a little more exciting. He currently knew 4 spells linked to enchantment: harden, soften, strengthen, and weaken, and had practiced them all a bit from time to time, occasionally using them in his work too. Still, more of the more interesting spells had the same issue that he had been just thinking on. They worked best when used on enchanted skills than on their own. Sounds good to me. What's the spell? Conjoin. Have you read up on it yet? Of course I have. He'd read all of the books his teacher had made available to him by this point. He was actually hoping he could be provided with some new ones before he left. All right, good. So you'll just use your mana through enchanting to attach the fragments together. Almost like gently laying a sealant over your work. Understand? Yeah, I got this. Ben did as he was told and started to form the spell, altering the mana inside of himself to give it the necessary properties. He was feeling impatient, which was why he hadn't bothered attempting it on something else first, but he was also careful enough to take his time with it and felt he had a solid understanding of the theory. It took a few minutes, but when all was done, he had a completed Fanadale cloak. Well, Fanadale scrap, perhaps he could sell the current piece to a rat as a cloak if need be, but as it was, Thera wouldn't make any use out of it. He handed it to his teacher, who gave it a look over on his behalf. Yep, looks like you managed fine. This should work perfectly. Oh, thank God. The thought of having messed up at the end would have been pretty unbearable, so having the success under his belt was exactly what he needed, though Falk was quick to throw some cold water on his relief. Don't be too happy yet, boy, you're still far from free. His teacher reached into a bag and pulled out a long and heavy green cloak. When one compared it to what he'd already made, he felt his enthusiasm plummet. Oh man, this really is going to take a while, huh? Damn straight. And this one's only going to be a temporary one for her too. I'm probably going to be the sucker to make her main one after this, so don't worry and just do your best. Sounds good. His teacher seemed done with their business, but Ben wanted to ask for his opinion on a couple things before heading out. Hey Falk, are there any skills you think I should be learning? Well, since you're adventuring, you could start using a hammer as a weapon to try and get the hammer wielder skill. It will also help you out at the forge after all. But why? It wasn't what he was looking for, but still an interesting piece of information that Ben filed away to consider later. He would at least need to grow his strength a bit more before considering that. I'm more thinking about things I can use for my enchanting. The number of skills I have is pretty limited and none are great for it. Plus, I'm a little worried that I'm not using my enchanting to its full potential. I see what you're saying, but on the spot not much comes to mind. Magics are the biggest ones, but that's not really in the cards for you unless you learn a non-affinity magic, and those can be tough. Still, I'll think on it and try to have an answer by the time I'm back. Wait, that sounds great and all, but what do you mean by non-affinity magics? Aren't those just powerful evolved skills? He had read about them a bit in some of the books on magic at the church, but it had sounded to him like it was when a skill turned until a significantly more powerful version of itself with an increased mana cost to go along with it, such as stealth turning into invisibility. No, there's a few others too. Heck, your enchanting technically counts as one of them, though probably the least mana costly one I can think of. The issue with that though is most people don't bother with them at all, and those that do have already gotten a decent skill level in one of their stronger affinities to build up their mana and have a better idea on how to use it. Not to say you couldn't learn one someday, but you're going to want your mana level a lot higher than it currently is if you do. Ben sighed and felt dumb for getting his hopes up. There still wouldn't be any magic for him in his immediate future, it looked like, though it would be worth looking into more non-affinity skills in the meantime. Just because it wasn't realistic at the moment didn't mean it wasn't worth aiming for after all. Don't let it get you down, boy. You just have to work to your strengths. You got resistance levels most people would only dream of in every affinity. If you were to specialize in enchanting armor and shields, you'd probably make a decent living. That is a fantastic point. Definitely something I could fall back on if I can't manage anything else. But the heart wants what it wants, and I want to make something exciting. Maybe I'll manage something eventually. They chatted for a while longer, and Thera came out of her room after hearing Fawkes' voice to greet him before he went off, letting them know he would be leaving tomorrow evening as he did. Ben prepared some brunch for them and then chose to sit in the living room and work on the cloak rather than be cooped up in the room he was using. When she saw this, Thera decided to grab her book and join him while he worked, and it was like this the hours passed. His speed was a bit faster than it had been yesterday, with him feeling more confident with his technique than when he first attempted this, but progress was still slow, especially with how much more material he now had to work with. Still, he focused heavily on the task, not letting any distraction get in his way until he noticed he was starting to get hungry and stopped to see the time. Deciding it was as good a time as any to start dinner, he grabbed Thera again to help, and they chatted while they prepared the food, Thera again discussing her book, a bit of historical fiction involving a political tension between two races, and the forbidden romance that sprang between the prince of one nation and the princess of the other. Ben made an offhand comment on how the star-crossed lovers trope seemed to be one that transcended universes, making Thera quick to ask about the fiction of his own world and what he enjoyed reading. As they spoke, Ben found himself surprised to learn that while they lacked science fiction, they actually still had a form of fantasy stories, usually involving a person awakening to a previously non-existent affinity of magic and fighting off imaginary beasts that would exist in the myths of whatever race ended up writing it. How can anyone be sure these creatures only exist in myth? Ben joked. This planet's such a hodgepodge, I feel like you could find anything on it if you looked hard enough. Even if he meant it as just a casual bit of fun. Thera took the question seriously. That's actually a good question. It's not like the gods brought over entire ecosystems with them, but so many things ended up coming along and running off that it's hard to say what's living in the untamed lands. That's not even considering the fact that some of these creatures could actually exist in their race's original homeworld. There's a story from I think about 100 years ago where a writer from some race created an incredibly popular play that used a legendary beast, and their god stepped in to mention that they got the way it looked completely wrong, shocking everyone to learn that it had actually existed in their mother world. Who knows how many other legends are like that too? Okay, that would be pretty crazy. He couldn't imagine how he would feel if someone could prove to him that not only had dragons existed on Earth, but nobody managed to nail the look. It must have been a surreal experience for that race at the time. After that, Ben started to talk about different stories he had read and remembered well, then tried to explain video to her, a medium he felt this world was sorely lacking. When they finished preparing food and Ben felt a notification going off in his head. Wow, hell, really? Cooking a meal gave me the last bit of experience I needed. What are you talking about? Thera asked, confused by his sudden outburst. Looks like I finally completed my current job, he casually told her. That's great. Why aren't you more excited? It is exciting and all. I'm just keeping my expectations in check for now. When I first got this one, it was the only option available. Who knows if anything will show up when I check this time. You were an apprentice craftsman, right? You should at least have the craftsman job now that you've finished the apprentice branch. Fair enough. Any idea where I can change it? There should be a room for it in the back of the guild. If you go and ask one of the members, they'll show it to you. Ben almost wanted to go check it out immediately, but he had told Sonia he would keep an eye out for Thera in the meantime so it could wait until she was home. He enjoyed his meal with her before going back to work on the cloak, all the while hoping in the back of his mind that he would have at least a few more options available. When Sonia came back in the evening, Ben explained he wanted to go off to change his job, but she insisted on applying more healing magic to him first before he left. He was almost better, but she was adamant it wouldn't do for him to strain himself on the walk, so he gave in before heading over. It was his first time outside in days, and the fresh air felt nice. The sun was just starting to go down, but he enjoyed the last rays of light as he made his way over to the guild. Walking into the building, he felt the eyes of plenty of the adventurers fall on him as they enjoyed drinks at their tables. He chose to ignore them when he was immediately called out to by one of the employees. "Ben, I'm glad to see you okay," yelled Ankh, leaving the desk and running up to him. "I heard what happened. Is it all right for you to be up yet?" "Hey Ankh, yeah, I'm good. Sonia has been working on me for a while, so I'm just a little sore is all." "Well, that's good," they said before lowering their voice. "And do you know how Thera's doing? With everything that happened to you and the rumors going around, she's been arrested." "She hasn't been arrested," he was quick to say. "She's just not leaving her home right now is all." He didn't feel it was his place to explain that she was basically under house arrest, especially since it seemed she could leave once he finished her cloak. "That's probably for the best until things die down a bit, but I'm glad to hear you're both okay. After the commotion you both caused coming back to town, and the fact that neither of you have come to the guild in about a week, we were starting to get worried. Sorry, but we're both all right. It'll probably just be a couple more weeks until we start doing any requests again. Anyway, I actually came here because I heard you had a job change room somewhere." "Oh yes, it's not very grand, but we do have a crystal in the back. Come along and I'll show you." He followed Ankh to a back room, far more shabby than the one at the church where he acquired his first job, and walked up to the crystal, placing his hand on top of it. He hadn't been expecting more than just the craftsman job, but he found himself both pleasantly surprised, as well as a bit confused. Available jobs: craftsman, enchanter, trap user, tree tamer. I get craftsman and enchanter, even trap user makes sense considering how I've hunted for the past few months. But what the heck is a tree tamer? This deserved some proper consideration, so he removed his hand from the crystal and turned back to Ankh. "Hey, I don't suppose you know what the job tree tamer's for, do you?" They tilted their head in thought for a moment before giving an answer. "I was under the impression that it was a dryad's racially linked job. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about it, but I know someone who might. Here, follow me." Ankh led him back out to the main room and pulled him through the tables of adventurers until he saw who he was going to and felt his stomach drop. He let out a small groan. Of course it has to be them. At the table in front of him, enjoying their drinks, was Sko and his two companions. They hadn't noticed them approaching until Ankh called out to them. "Pardon me, Sakhel. Would you mind giving us a moment of your time?" They turned to them, and the horned green girl, presumably Sakhel, eyed Ben with some suspicion before answering. "Hey Ankh. Sure, what do you need? Ben here is changing his job, but he got a bit of a unique option. We were hoping you may know something about it." "Well, I'm not sure why you think I would know anything, but sure, let's hear it." "Wait," Sko cut in. "If he wants to know, he should hear us out first." "Sko?" The snake-like Naga beside him started in a warning voice. "Raelia, he's brushed us off every time we've tried to talk to him. If he wants our help, I'm not backing down now." "Really, I'm only looking for Satchel's help, but sure, I'll hear you out," Ben said casually. The three of them seemed completely thrown off guard by his sudden willingness to talk, considering how he'd ignored them up until that point. But by now he had a pretty good idea of what they were going to say anyway. Sko was quick to recover. "Well, maybe you're not a complete lost cause after all. Look, Thera's got some crazy magic that will mess with your mind. She used it to drive one of the adventurers insane. Hell, she just did it to the whole town a week ago. If you stick around her for too long, you're only putting yourself in danger." "Sko!" Ankh yelled at him. "You know damn well things are more complicated than that. Thera's a nice young girl. I won't put up with you trying to scare off her partner. Understood?" "But Ankh," Sakhel spoke up. Even if Sko oversimplified things too much, he's not wrong. Her passive magic drove Roan insane, and it took hours for people to shake their side effects after she ran through the town. He needs to at least be aware about it. We all know that Roan was an unbalanced individual to begin with, Ankh argued. Not to mention that Thera warned both him and the guild. She should not be held responsible for our failings. Plus, Ben spoke up, the only reason she had run through the town like that was to save my life. Anyway, I'm already aware of all this. Is there anything else? 'Cause if not, I want to move on to my own problem. Wait, you know? And you're still working with her? Just how deep has she gotten her claws into you? Sko asked. Ankh, come on. Does he seem like he's reacting like someone who knows they're hanging around someone so dangerous? Ben let out a long sigh and pulled out his card, for once taking care to hide all the information on it except his resistances. No need to make everyone aware of his status as an apostle. Sko, a toddler with a knife, could be dangerous. It's not going to worry me too much. Anyway, I can resist basically any passive magic from what I understand. He wasn't strictly sure if that was true, of course, but given the amount of mana Thera had access to, it still only resulted in needing a resistance of 40. He was comfortable making that assertion for now. He tossed over his card and let the three of them take a look, pretty much ignoring all of their mumblings about his resistances as they looked it over. So it's all good and we can move on, right?
No.
This is impressive and all. I'm sure you'd make a great tank with these resistances. But that doesn't mean you aren't affected by her, he continued on stubbornly. Ben had to wonder if all of this was worth it for info on a job he doubted he would be taking anyway. But Raylia came to his defense. No, Sko, it does. Resistances don't count the same way for passive magics as they do for a regular spell. Instead of every 10 points of resistance weakening a spell's effects by about 5%, a passive magic can actually be measured to determine at what resistance level it wouldn't have any effects at. With the exception of some of the mana-based lifeforms around, I've never heard of anything needing a resistance higher than in the 20s. Sko fell silent once this was explained to him, and Ben found that was actually quite interesting to learn as well. Enough so that he no longer considered the entire conversation a complete waste of time. Considering that Thera's father was one of those mana-based life forms, it probably contributed to her higher power as well, and solidified his theory that he was immune to most, if not all, passive magics. Alright, well, now that that's out of the way, Sakhel, can you tell us anything about the tree tamer job? It's usually a dryad-linked one, right? Ankh asked, bringing them back around to the original purpose of coming to their table. Hearing Ankh's question, though, she bolted up and grabbed Ben's hands. You can become a tree tamer? So you awakened your skills into plant magic? No, he said, unsure of how to react to the girl's immediate change in demeanor. So you were able to get low plant magic then? I'm so jealous. It's so hard to awaken if your race doesn't have a proper affinity for it. Wait, no, I don't have any sort of plant magic. For that matter, what is plant magic? She let go of his hands and looked at him funny. You must have something. How could you have tamed a plant without being able to properly understand it? When she asked that, Ben had an idea on what he'd done, but he had to verify. Is plant magic something that lets you talk to plants? Among other things, but that's the aspect you need to use to unlock the tree tamer job, she told him with a distant look in her eye. Plant magic is something that will awaken when you evolve life, water, and earth magic together. Of course, there's also a small chance you can awaken low plant magic from training in those three attributes, and pure-blooded dryads have access to it from birth. She suddenly focused back in on him again and got into his face. So how did you manage to unlock the job without it? Raylia stood up and gently pulled her back a bit. Sorry about her, she said. Her dream is to awaken to plant magic one day, so she's just a little excited now. Raylia, you don't need to tell him that. I'm just curious is all. So how did you manage it? She asked again in a much calmer way. He didn't see too much harm in explaining. Actually, what he saw was an opportunity. I used a skill called Connect. It lets me link up to other living things and feel what they're feeling. I've been training it by holding conversations of sorts with my houseplant. Her eyes lit up in excitement. I don't suppose you could tell me how you got it. Could you? If I want to awaken my skills, then being able to talk to plants already seems like a good way to do it. Kaus, I have no problem letting you know, but you may not want to do it. I got it as a gift skill from my god. Oh, she deflated a little. So I'd have to convert, and even then I wouldn't be guaranteed to get it. Well, that's not strictly true, he told her, preparing a small lie. You would have to convert, yes. But my god Myriad is one with only a few followers and values everyone he gets. When I converted, his apostle assured me that as long as his followers would make sure to pray to him every day, they would eventually get a gift skill. It only took me a couple months. Really? Her eyes lit up, though she looked conflicted. But changing my faith just for a skill. But if I really could get it in just a few months of prayer. I don't even know anything about this god. I'll think about it, she yelled. Would you mind if I ask you any questions I have about him later? Sure, I don't mind. You see that myriad? Look at me being a proper apostle. But his smug thought was met with silence. Of course, the time I actually do this is a time he's not watching. But anyway, back to Tree Tamer. Could you tell me any more about the job? Oh, sure, of course. It's pretty much just a job that helps you understand plants. You'll grow a greater feeling for how to take care of them, as well as how to understand their needs. It usually helps you increase your plant magic if you get it, but since you don't have it, I would think it would provide bonuses to your connect skill. Usually it's something dryads that want to care for their home forests acquire, but I think farmers get it too if they can to help produce better crops. That was actually super informative, thanks. And if you have any questions about Myriad, just let me know. I'll be happy to help you out. With everything he needed done, Ben left with Ankh, back to think on what he should pick. He started to walk back to the job change room and reviewed his options. Trap user could be fun, and he did hunt a lot, but if it just made him more successful at hunting, he didn't care too much. As much as he enjoyed adventuring with Thera at the moment and gathering his own materials, he wasn't sure he wanted to spend who knows how long leveling it up. Not to mention that without combat skills it could still take an even longer time to complete. Tree Tamer was another interesting one if what Sakhel had said was correct, but maybe one he would leave for later in the future in case the main two he was interested in were dead ends after he completed them. Yes, the only options he was going to take seriously were Craftsman and Enchanter. Both had their positives and negatives as far as he could see. For Craftsman, he may be able to figure out a way to make better staves for Thera beyond just making them resist her magic more. The prospect of being able to make more complex things in general was appealing to him as well, so he was sorely tempted by it. On the other hand, it was an advanced version of the apprentice job he just had, so it would probably take longer to level up. Enchanter seemed like it could help him in the immediate future. He might be able to finish Thera's cloak quicker with the benefits it would give him, and maybe he'd be able to level up his skill faster, so he would be able to make a staff that could resist her magic more strongly. The issue was how useful it would be for anything else. Sure, he could just keep applying heavy resistances onto items to sell as his teacher suggested, but it wouldn't be good for much else. With no magic and no high-level skills, he just couldn't feel too much point in it. After minutes of agonizing over it and flip-flopping, he returned to the room and placed his hand back on the crystal, knowing his decision was made. Name: Ben Hef. Race: human. Titles: Apostle of Myriad. Jobs: Craftsman, LV0. Previous jobs: Apprentice Craftsman. Attributes: a Vitality, 160. A Vitality recovery rate, 1 per hour. Mana, 84. Mana recovery rate, 5 per minute. Strength, 123. Agility, 84. Stamina, 576. Intelligence, 192. Affinities: Light 3. Life 2. Fire, 4. Water 3. Air, 4. Earth 2. Death 3. Dark 1. Space, 4 time, 5. Resistances: Light, 68. Life, 72. Fire, 75. Water, 69. Air, 66. Earth, 8. Death, 78. Dark, 85. Space, 63. Time, 61. Blessed skills: Crafting LV2. Enchanting LV2. Focus LV1. Passive skills: World Speak Plus. Active skills: Dismantling LV1. Stealth LV0. Connect LV1. Blessings: A Myriad's Blessing. The world spoke out to him, and it was remembering what it had said when he first picked the apprentice job that helped finalize his decision. It had said the same thing now: all crafting-related skills would receive a growth bonus, so presumably it was any skill that would result in a final product or be used with crafting. In that case, wouldn't enchanting count as a crafting-related skill? Sure, it wasn't a part of his craftsman skill already, but he couldn't help but think it was related enough that it might apply. Aside from that, he had been able to level it up just as much as his crafting skill while he was an apprentice craftsman, so even if this was just a theory, he felt it was worth taking the job anyway. With that finally done, he went back to the house for the night. When he got back, both Thera and Sonia were curious about what he had ended up choosing, so he told them he was now a craftsman and explained the other options he had available. They were especially curious about his potential to be a tree tamer, given that ordinarily one would need an uncommon magic variant to use it, but eventually the conversation died down and he went back to working on the cloak before turning in for the night. "Oh, Ben, it's wonderful!" yelled a floating cube that appeared in front of him shortly after he had gone to sleep. "I received a prayer. It was just a greeting. But other than you and Thera, I don't know how long it's been." "Sakhel prayed to you already, huh? Well, that's good. Look at me being a proper apostle and everything." "Yes, she mentioned she had heard about me from you. I was busy with another god, so I didn't see. But tell me everything." Once again, Ben recounted the events of the day, talking about his job change and the options available for Myriad's benefit. "So I was thinking we could advertise the fact that your gift skill may help lead to awakening to plant magic. That is, of course, if you think it's possible. I'm not going to go around lying for you. It's possible, but it's not a guarantee. From what I know, the more you come to understand the combined magic you're attempting to gain, the more you increase your chances of getting it. Having access to an ability and job that is closely tied to it could only improve your chances, so it wouldn't be lying, but it would probably be best to be upfront about the fact that it's not a sure thing. I wouldn't want any of my future believers to turn spiteful on me after all. Of course, the chances of awakening a skill are slim enough as it is that it probably wouldn't be a huge concern anyway." "Okay, cool. Now I just need to figure out how to find people who want that magic. Who knows how I'll manage that? Oh well, I'll figure that out after I get this cloak done. When I do, you won't take too long to give any new believers the skill, will you?" I told Sakhel I'd learn it in a few months. I'd feel bad if I learned it that fast, since I'm your apostle, and it would actually take years or something. "You don't need to worry about that. It's a bit hard to put in mortal terms, but I essentially have the blueprint for the skill now. Unlike when I was preparing it for you, I had to make it from scratch. A couple months should be a reasonable time frame so long as they pray regularly. Of course, I'll end up pretty busy for a while if we get a whole lot of believers trying to get the skill all at once." "Well, I doubt we'll have to worry about that problem. A god can dream." The next week was a dull blur for Ben. Falk left and Sonia finished his treatment, and Ben spent most of every day he had working on the cloak and preparing meals with Thera. While doing both things, he was constantly looking at his card, waiting to catch his level going up to see if there was only any growth while he cooked, or if he would improve his job by working on enchantment as well. It didn't take long to confirm his suspicions and convince himself that the craftsman job considered enchanting a crafting skill. Other than that, passing the time wasn't too bad. Eventually Thera found herself bored of her books as well and started to come and chat with him while he worked, but it was still tedious. The days were blending together, and since he wasn't leaving the house, he had all but lost his sense of time. Surely there had to be a better way than this? His teacher had mentioned there were others, but he hadn't told Ben about them at all. Of course, if there was a better option available, he was sure that Falk would have done that instead of spending over a week making one of these stupid cloaks. Ben? Thera spoke up as these thoughts ran through his head. "Everything okay? You're grimacing pretty hard." He took a break and felt his cheeks. He hadn't realized how tensed up he had been. This must have been getting to him more than he thought. "I'm fine. Sorry. Just understanding why these things aren't more common. There's no way an average person could afford the amount of time and effort that goes into one of them after all. Any enchanter that would want to make one of these would probably make a lot more money just producing a bunch of smaller, simpler things. I'm sorry to put you through all this work. Don't apologize, it's my fault I broke yours anyway. I'm just gonna have to do something a lot more fun after this is done to blow off some steam." "Oh yeah? What are you going to do then?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. He thought about it for a moment before his stomach gurgles, alerting him it was time to cook something, but also giving him his answer. "Let's go to every restaurant and food stall in town." "I have to come too?" she asked with a hint of surprise. "Of course, you'll have your cloak then, so let's eat till we puke." A small laugh escaped her while she considered his suggestion. "Okay, sure. I'm getting pretty bored being cramped up in here myself. But need I remind you I won't be able to see through the hood of this one? He gave a little shrug. Then I'll guide you. Anyway, speaking of food, I'm getting pretty hungry. Let's cook something up. What are you feeling? How about the salad you made the other day? The sea-tail one? Sure, we should still have the ingredients for it. Of course it happened now, he said with a sigh. What's wrong? Thera asked, looking up from a game she was playing with Sonia. Nothing, just thinking out loud. Anyway, it's done. Hearing his words, they put their game on hold to rush over and give it a look. The appearance isn't going to change from how it's looked the last 2 weeks, guys. It was a nice forest green, and all in all a good quality cloak, but the appearance hadn't changed much at all. He wasn't sure how good their mana sense was, but he could only barely tell the particular technique he had used because he knew what to look for. To an average person with any mana sense, it would probably appear as if he had just laid a random skill on top of it without having any clue the amount of work it took. Still, its appearance didn't dissuade Sonia at all. That's wonderful, Ben. Let's see, it's a little late, but it should be okay if I grab a couple of the guards to verify it works. Wait here and I'll be right back, Sonia told him with cheer before running off. As they waited, Ben took her place in the game and kept playing against Thera. It was called Lomage and vaguely reminded him of chess. Each team had a piece that represented a different magic affinity that would move a certain way or be able to perform an action, as well as 10 non-mage pieces that could only move. By the time Sonia came back, he was fairly confident he had left her in a terrible position to continue the game, and Thera threw on the cloak while the guards waited to be let in. All right, Dewball, go in and let's see how it goes, said one guard to the other, forcing him inside while he waited a few meters away. What are they doing? Ben whispered to Sonia, unsure of how they were testing the cloak. Basically, a guard with a high resistance waits to the side in case anything goes wrong while a guard with a low one approaches Thera. If she can noticeably affect his will at all, the idea is the first guard can run and alert the others of the problem if it seems that they'll try something they shouldn't. She lowered her voice even more before continuing. Of course, if the cloak doesn't work, there's no way either of them would be safe from her magic. But it should be fine. Cool, no pressure. Now Ben was getting nervous. It would be a nightmare if he did something wrong while making it and it didn't end up working. While they spoke, the guards told Thera to give an instruction, and she did. Jump 5 times. It sounded a little silly, but it was as good an option as any. And Ben waited with bated breath as worry started to seep deeper into him. But the guards stood motionless. They continued on with a few more questions and attempts for certainty, but with each failed attempt Ben was feeling more and more sure of the quality of his work. It was doing its job, no doubt about it. All right, everything seems in order, said the first guard. As long as you make sure to wear it properly, there's no problem with you going outside. I'll make sure the rest of the guards are aware of the results. Thank you both so much for coming on short notice, Sonia told them happily. It's no problem, ma'am. Now if you'll excuse us, we'll be heading out. You folks have an excellent night. When they left, Ben turned to Thera with a big grin on his face. So, eating till we puke? I'm having second thoughts, Thera said in the morning as they were preparing to head out. I'm not going to be able to see anything. This is going to be such a pain. Why don't we wait until Uncle gets back and makes me one I can see through? Thera, that could be a couple weeks. Besides, it will actually break my heart if the cloak I spent 2 weeks on never sees any use. Forever waiting in a closet for an emergency that will never come. We have to go out at least once. Okay, fine. Just don't let me fall or bump into anyone. Let's just grab our food and come back here. Sure, sounds good to me. They linked arms and started to make their way through the town, Ben making sure to keep a slow but comfortable pace for Thera to keep up with, and went on their way. They hit each stall they walked by, trying to take a loop that would bring them across all the ones he knew of to the biggest restaurant in the town, before making their way back to the house. Unfortunately, things typically went better in his head than in practice. Is something wrong? Thera asked him after the first few stops. She had felt his arms slowly tense up throughout the stroll, but with her vision obstructed had no way to see what was going on. No, everything's good, he lied. On the first few stops, he noticed they were getting some strange looks, but he didn't think much of it. Now though some of the people were looking a lot more angry and he had to remember that even if she was covered up, she was probably easily identifiable to the majority of people living in the town as the person always in a cloak with various scary rumors surrounding her. Given that some of these people may have even been taken in by her magic those few weeks ago, he had to wonder if she would actually be able to work in the town again once Falk was back and Roan was caught, so he decided to cut their walk short. Hey, I think we actually have enough food that we're going to be sick by now. 5 stalls is more than I thought. Oh, I was kind of looking forward to the takeout from the restaurant. Their food's really good. Oh yeah? Why don't we go when you get your new cloak then? You'll probably like it a lot more if you aren't stuffed while eating. Well, that's true. Okay, sounds good. But I'll be holding you to it. Hey, now I won't bail. I haven't tried any of their stuff yet myself. He tried to keep their conversation going while picking up the pace a bit, and made it back home. So, are you going to tell me what happened? She asked as they were sitting down and eating, sampling a bit of everything. She was more perceptive than he'd hoped, but he still tried to brush it off. I have no clue what you're talking about. She silently stared into his eyes, waiting for a real response, and he let out a groan. Okay. I just wasn't getting the impression that people wanted us around was all. You mean people didn't want me around? She responded, putting her food down and turning away. Things will calm down soon, Thera. Try not to stress out. Will they? I'm sure everyone who wasn't already scared of me is now. And now I'm going to be stuck here alone until Falk gets back and sorts out my cloak. Hell, even when he's back people still won't want me in this town. But aside from Analia, this is the only place I have any close family. Even in Analia, I'll still be by myself. What about any friends in your homeland? My charm is so strong it beats the darkness resistance of the majority of succubi. I'm just lucky Auntie Sonia's levels of resistance are high enough that she isn't affected, and Uncle Falk got a high-quality resistance amulet made. A resistance amulet? He asked despite himself, only to immediately tell himself off. Clearly the time to ask that, Ben, you big dumb idiot. Thankfully she didn't seem bothered by it. It basically just covers you in a layer of whatever the resistance level is on the amulet. It's usually hidden behind his fur. Still, it's not like everyone can have one of those things. She teared up a little and hid her face in her arms on the table. I never asked for any of this, you know? It's not like I want to have this effect on people. I know. Without any thought, he slid his chair over and gave her head a gentle pat. The same way he used to do to calm down his little brother when he got upset. I just want to be normal, she said in a much smaller voice. He didn't know what he could say to help the sad girl at his side. So he tried to reassure her the only way he could. Well, either way you won't be alone here until Falk gets back. I'm still around, right? Didn't you agree to only stay here until you finished the cloak? She asked, peeking up at him. I'm sure Sonia won't mind me staying another week or whenever it is Falk gets back. Besides, I still have to paint those pictures I promised her. And anyway, people are quick to forget. I'm sure in another week or 2 things will calm down. We'll see. Still, even if she didn't seem confident about it, she rubbed her eyes and sat up. I have confidence. Now come on. Let's finish up here and do something. I still have to redeem myself in Lomage. She gave a small laugh. I don't think you could possibly manage that, but I'd like to see you try. That's 4 wins and 0 losses for me, she said, adding another tally to a sheet of paper. Thera, please. I'm asking you to have a little mercy on me and hold back a bit. No can do, you'll never get better that way. This is also only my 10th time playing ever. I need to work on getting my strategy down is all. Well then work away. Until a merchant passes through with some new books, there isn't much else to do currently. Alright, fine. Just you wait until I make a chessboard or something, you'll be begging for mercy. He was terrible at chess too, but hopefully she would be worse. His proclamation only made her eyes light up though. Is that a game from your world? Yeah, it was a pretty popular one too. Honestly, not my first pick for games I would make though. I just said that one because it's hard. Alright, you should definitely make some then. Will do, but if you want to do something different, aren't there other games from this world we could play? Surely with all the different races around there has to be a good variety. There is, but boards and pieces and whatever else you need have to be made, and if the craftsman you get doesn't understand the rules they may make it wrong if you commission it. Sometimes merchants bring some to town, but this place pretty much exists because it's on the way to a gate. Board games aren't a priority when every town is going to have access to at least a couple ones around. So chances of me getting rich off selling Earth games? Slim, but I'm sure any you try to sell at the next market will do well if you make some. Cool, I'll keep that in mind. As they were talking, a knock came from the door, and Ben went to check it while Thera went to throw on her cloak. When he opened the door, there were 2 guards present. Hello there. Would Miss Thera be home at the moment? Oh God, what now? And if she is? He asked, a bit more defensively than he meant to. The second guard spoke up. You don't need to be so worried. There's just a problem we were hoping we could get her help with. It's rather important, unfortunately. Thera had heard what they were saying as she donned her cloak and slid up behind Ben. What could I possibly help you with? She asked in genuine confusion. We need you to come to the guard's room. Roan's been caught.